Pang Li was enraged, and he was just about to attack. However, he immediately suppressed his anger and said, "Brat, do you have to complicate a simple matter?" Ling Han pretended to be a hothead. "What is it? I'm not selling. So could it be that you guys want to snatch it by force?" Pang Lily laughed loudly. "No, why would our Pang clan do something like robbery? At least, in the Azure Spirit City they wouldn't. Although this was their territory, on the surface they had to be even more just. Otherwise, who would come to the Azure Spirit City to do business?" "Then what do you guys want to do?" Ling Han asked. Pang Li chuckled. "You will know when the time comes. Who asked you to be so stupid? In future you will regret it. If only you had agreed to my request today." "I don't believe it," Ling Han said resolutely, the image of a foolish young man vivid and lifelike. Pang Li humphed and strode off. Another day later, the auction began. Ling Han naturally participated as well. If there was anything good, he too wanted to join in. For those below Celestial Path, the common currency was Jade Seeds, and for Celestial Path elites, the common currency was Dao Stone. Ling Han could only sigh helplessly. Though he had once possessed 3, he had spent them all on the War Colossus. However, there was nothing good that was being sold. He just watched the excitement. In the end, the water element crystal was the climax item as expected. "The base price is 2 jade seeds," the auctioneer said. 2 jade seeds? A cold smirk appeared at the comers of Ling Han's lips. In his previous exchange with the auction house, the latter had said that the starting price would be measured in Dao stones. Though this was for Mystery Realm tier, its significance was too extraordinary, so it could completely be auctioned off at a price measured in Dao stones. Now, not only had it been switched to jade seeds, but the starting price was only 100 jade seeds at that. Needless to say, it was definitely the Pang clan that was behind this. If Ling Han really wanted to auction off this water element crystal, he would definitely explode at this moment. However, he merely sneered at this moment. Pang clan, you think you've gained an advantage now, but you'll know later just how great a loss you've suffered. The Pang clan had begun to concoct the 5 elements karmic pill, and this definitely meant that they had already obtained the other 4 types of element crystal. Then, the result of the concoction would be wasting all 5 portions of ingredients. In fact, it would even cause who knew what kind of consequences for that prodigy from the Pang clan who would be consuming it. Even he was slightly expectant. 100 jade seeds. Someone raised their plaque. The bid is at 2 jade seeds. Is there anyone who would like to make a higher bid? The auctioneer called out loudly. Is there anyone? 2 jade seeds once, 2 jade seeds twice, 2 jade seeds 3 times sold. The auctioneer made the final decision. The climax item was auctioned off for the high price of 2 jade seeds? Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? Even if Ling Han knew that the Pang clan was shameless, he still detested the way they treated him. It was no wonder that the Pang clan was getting weaker and weaker with each generation. With such a narrow-minded mindset, what great things could happen? Ling Han left, infuriated. When he arrived outside the auction house, he saw that Pang Li was already waiting for him. "Young man, do you regret it now?" Pang Li laughed loudly, extremely proud of himself. Ling Han gritted his teeth and said, "You people have gone too far. Aren't you afraid of drawing public indignation? What are you saying? Firstly, we didn't snatch it, and secondly, we didn't steal it. How could we possibly cause public indignation?" Pang Li smiled and said, "Are you dissatisfied?" Ling Han humphed before turning around to leave. "Wait," Pang Li said. "Shua." He tossed a bag over and said, "This is your 2 jade seeds. Don't forget to take it. Then, get out of Azure Spirit City and never come back again." Ling Han naturally wouldn't pick it up. Right now, he was playing the role of a naive and stubborn youth. Ha 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 ha. Behind him, Pang Li's arrogant laughter was heard. After walking far away, Ling Han finally smiled. The mine had already been buried, but who knew when it would explode? At that time, who knew what kind of expressions Pang Li and the Pang clan would have? Ling Han's next stop was the Ironwood Forest. Among the lands of 5 elements, this was a place that could nurture wood element crystals. 3 days later, Ling Han finally arrived at his destination. Ling Han pondered for a moment. Should he ask the 7 babies for help? That was because it was possible that they would expose his identity. But upon further thought, the babies had not died in the first place, so what was so strange about them coming here? Moreover, even if the Pang clan and Lei clan knew that he had not died yet, so what? Worse come to worst, they could send someone over again. What need was there for him to be afraid? After suffering a loss once, he couldn't fall for it a second time. Moreover, the situation in the Ironwood Forest was different. Ling Han still disguised himself as Ken Yi and acted separately from the 7 children. Now, he had to concentrate on fighting the monsters. If he could avoid trouble, it was best to avoid trouble. The Ironwood Forest was extraordinarily huge and was more than 10 times the size of the Coldwater Lake. However, taking into account the fact that the Coldwater Lake was a 3-dimensional space and had a depth of more than 30,000 meters, if this was taken into account, the Coldwater Lake wasn't small at all. Ling Han and the children split up, agreeing to meet once every 5 days. Ling Han drew the little Loli into the gourd. This little girl was the easiest to expose Ling Han's identity. Regarding this, Tang Yuner naturally protested. However, she couldn't withstand Ling Han's brute force, and she was forcefully stuffed into the gourd. Ling Han strode forwards. He would first gather essence of wood, then fuse it into the wood crystal element. As for the essence of wood, it naturally came from wood element creatures. The majority of them were tree men that could run, jump, and kill. Usually, when they stuck their roots into the ground, they would look like a very ordinary tree. However, if it wanted to make a move or if it was attacked, it would pull out its roots, and in an instant it was no longer an ordinary tree. Aside from that, there were also demonic beasts that had yet to develop intelligence in the forest, and this was also a great threat. Additionally, there were also fellow travelers that had come to collect the essence of wood. In truth, these fellow travelers were the ones that he had to guard against the most. Ling Han activated his eye technique, and with a single glance, he could clearly see whether it was an ordinary tree or a tree man. After walking for a long time, he finally discovered his first target. This was a large tree that was as tall as 90 meters, and the trunk of the tree was so wide that it would take 5 to 6 adults to wrap their arms around it. Ling Han saw the majestic life essence, which was incompatible with the surrounding trees. Ling Han didn't immediately attack. Instead, he walked over and sat down. However, though he looked relaxed, his divine sense had long since spread out. He saw that one of the branches of this great tree was slowly stretching over. When it was close to him, it suddenly sped up, as fast as lightning, wanting to entangle him tightly. Ling Han immediately leaped up, dodging the large tree's attack. Boom! At this time, the great tree no longer put on any pretenses. It dug itself out of the ground, and its body instantly grew another 30 over meters tall. Ling Han took the initiative to attack the large tree. Frequency attack was activated, and as he threw a punch, 70 layers of power stacked together. The tree man hurriedly waved its branches to parry. Pong! It was only a single strike, and this branch was rapidly disintegrating, and the damage was even spreading towards its main body. Pa pa pa! Its main body continuously released explosive sounds and was shattered into pieces. Ling Han's current destructive power was too terrifying. With just a single punch, he had blasted the tree man into dozens of pieces. Is this the true might of the demonic monkey fists? Ling Han mused. The tree man crumbled, and near its roots, there was a ray of light. Upon a closer look, that was actually a drop of green liquid, pitifully small. Essence of wood. Ling Han put away the essence of wood and continued to search for new tree men. At first, he had thought that since the tree man was a plant type, they would have an indifferent nature. Thus, he did not attack directly, because killing him for no reason was not in line with Ling Han's way of doing things. But now that the tree man was so fierce, Ling Han would be able to kill him without any psychological burden. He searched for a new tree man, and then attacked without any reservations. After half a day, he had gained quite a lot, but this efficiency was still no match for when he had been in Extreme Flame Valley, but was much better than his experiences at the Coldwater Lake. However, he had encountered a fortuitous encounter at the Coldwater Lake, and he had only spent a total of 2 months there. In this case, it might take 4 months or even slightly longer. Ling Han could only hope that he would be able to encounter a Tree Man King and gain a lot all at once. The next day, when the sun had just risen, Ling Han first dragged the little lowly out to cultivate together, then went to eat. This just happened to be one of the nodal points for his cultivation. This time, he opened another 9 apertures and took another step further on the path of cultivation. Ling Han continued to move. Fighting monsters was naturally an extremely boring task, but there was nothing he could do about it. For the sake of becoming stronger in the future, he had to be able to bear the weariness and loneliness. "Brat, stop right there." Not long after he left, someone called out to him. The other was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He held a saber in his hand and looked very fierce. "Hand over the essence of wood, or die." The man waved the saber in his hand. A strange smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he said, "You truly want to rob me? Less nonsense, ah." After a while, the middle-aged man cried, "That damn brat!" Not only did he turn around and rob him completely, he even stripped him of all his clothes and hung him from a tree. If anyone passed by, they would be able to admire his little cock. How humiliating! Ling Han decided to rob others as well. This was the only way to quickly make a fortune. Moreover, the reason why they were fighting treemen here was because they were hired by the Pang clan. He started to get busy. When he saw treemen, he would fight treemen, and when he saw cultivators, he would rob them. Sometimes, he would even have to fight demonic beasts. Life was truly colorful. In the blink of an eye, 20 days had passed. While Ling Han had obtained a great many essence of wood, he had also pushed the number of apertures he had opened up to 63. He traversed through the forest, searching for prey. He made a discovery. There was an incredibly tall giant tree ahead of him. It was probably at least 300 meters tall. It had spread out its massive crown, and even in this forest, it stood out like a swan among chickens. Tree Man King. Ling Han couldn't help but feel overjoyed. There really was such a being. "Don't even think about it." A cold voice rang out. Ling Han turned his head and saw that not too far to his right, there was presently a young man standing with his sword behind his back. His hands were crossed behind his back, filled with the air of showing off. Though Ling Han was also very fond of showing off, he was naturally displeased to see others show off. "Did you grow this tree?" Ling Han asked. "Don't be flippant," the sword-bearing man said calmly. "This is a 1,000-year-old tree, and it's not something you can deal with. Don't seek death. Obediently watch from the sidelines. When I kill this 1,000-year-old locust tree and take away the tree heart, you'll naturally be able to obtain the essence of wood." He was quite caring. Ling Han looked at the large tree in disbelief. This was actually an old monster that was 1,000 years old? He smiled and said, "Since he's already lived for 1,000 years, it's clear that he's extremely skilled at staying alive. You mightn't be able to deal with him." "Humph. You don't have to worry about that." The sword-bearing man strode towards the 1,000-year-old locust tree. He drew his sword, and naturally, a powerful aura circulated, which was very extraordinary. Show! Right at this moment, a black shadow actually smashed over from the locust tree, striking out at the sword-bearing man. Ling Han looked closely. That was a fruit. Was the old locust tree trying to make the first move? The sword-bearing man naturally saw it as well. He drew his sword. Schwa sword light swept past, and that fruit was sliced into 2 halves. However, this was only the beginning. Boom, the 2 halves of the fruit actually exploded abruptly. Under the violent surge of energy, the sword-bearing man was instantly sent flying, coughing up copious amounts of blood. Fuck, what was this, an explosion fruit? Ling Han couldn't help but think of the ethereal peak. The vegetable fields there also had these fruits that would explode. Watermelons, loofahs, and grapes had all become deadly weapons with great destructive power. He had not thought that he would encounter it here again. If this really was a 1,000-year-old locust tree, then it could be imagined what kind of fatal move it would have developed. Zhi. On the trunk of the old locust tree, a purple-colored squirrel appeared. Its two small front paws were holding onto a fruit, and it was currently barking downwards, looking very furious. Could it be that the fruit just now had been thrown by this squirrel? Hold on. Ling Han was a little confused. Wasn't this a locust tree? What was a squirrel like you doing on a locust tree? You were not eating pine nuts. Have you changed your diet? Xiao, the purple squirrel raised its two small paws high, then smashed them downwards. That fruit was then thrown again towards the sword-bearing man. After suffering a loss once, the sword-bearing man naturally would not repeat the same mistake. He hurriedly leaped up and dodged this toss. Boom! The fruit crashed onto the ground, instantly creating a huge explosion. A terrifying energy surged madly, and even Ling Han, who was standing very far away, was affected. Zhi. The purple squirrel jumped up and down as if to say, "This is my territory, so don't even think of taking it over." Was this thrower added with the explosion fruit the reason why the old locust tree could live for more than 1,000 years without being knocked down? The sword-bearing man humphed. He attacked again, his figure darting like a dragon. Xiao. The little squirrel continued to smash the fruits, but not one of them hit him. Just as he was about to climb up the tree, a terrifying scene appeared. At least 100 fruits were thrown out at the same time. This was practically a rain of fruits, densely packed together, and there was no way to dodge at all. The sword-bearing man hurriedly turned around and retreated rapidly. Hong. The fruits exploded, forming a brilliant storm of energy. On the tree, small squirrels popped out one after another. Upon counting, there were at least over 100 of them. Just now, it was them that had smashed the fruits together, forcing the man with the sword to retreat. However, aside from the first one, the others all had gray fur, which made that purple-colored squirrel appear very conspicuous. Could this be some kind of foreign species? Say, Ern, do you need help? Ling Han asked the sword-bearing man. No need, the man said through gritted teeth. Then we will both act alone. Ling Han naturally wouldn't listen to him. He dashed out and charged towards the old locust tree. I already said, watch from the sidelines. The sword-bearing man shouted loudly and set off in rapid pursuit of Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and brandished a fist at the man. Boom! Bursts of devastating power surged into the surroundings. The man was shocked. He had not thought that Ling Han's power would actually be so strong. He shot out a flash of sword chi to disperse it. His sword technique was actually quite brilliant, forcibly splitting apart the power of his fist. However, Ling Han had already dashed ahead of him. Xiao. The small squirrels also launched attacks at Ling Han, and countless fruits smashed towards him. Ling Han moved. His hands danced, and a gentle force instantly caught hold of the fruit. Then he threw it diagonally outwards. Hong, the sounds of a great explosion rose and fell, but not a single fruit exploded near Ling Han. The sword-bearing man's eyes involuntarily twitched. Ling Han looked to be having an easy time, but his control over power needed to be perfect to the extreme. Only then would he be able to hold the fruit with gentle power. Otherwise, if there was the slightest mistake, the fruit would immediately explode. To be able to control his power to such a perfect extent, this person was practically a monster. He hurriedly pulled himself together and followed suit. Ling Han was already nearing the tree. With a leap, his feet stepped on the tree. Xiao, he rushed towards the crown of the tree. Zhi. The little squirrels became anxious, and they all threw the fruits even faster. Ling Han continuously delivered palm strikes, and gentle power surged, sending the fruits away one after another. Where are you throwing them? Below them, the roar of the man with the sword on his back was heard. A few fruits that Ling Han had neutralized were thrown towards him. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh loudly. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I think you did it on purpose. The sword-bearing man's heart was filled with gloom. He could confirm that Ling Han definitely had the ability to control the direction of the fruits he threw out, yet there were a few that were flying towards him. It must have been deliberate on his part. However, he didn't have any evidence to accuse Ling Han. Furthermore, Hu asked him to follow behind Ling Han. Actually, he could circle around to the other side of the tree, but that way he would definitely have to sustain even more fruit attacks, unlike now when Ling Han had drawn all the firepower. He only had to take note of the fruits that Ling Han had accidentally thrown over. It was naturally very simple for him to make his choice. Ling Han was already close to the crown of the tree. With a creak, all the squirrels scattered like birds. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Weren't you all fierce just now? Why are you cowering now?" Ling Han stood on a branch. Though this was only a branch, it was still incredibly thick. The little squirrels had already fled without a trace. Towards these cowards, Ling Han had no interest in pursuing them. Xiao, the sword-bearing man, also leaped up. He looked at Ling Han with a very complicated gaze. At first, he had even looked down on Ling Han, but in the blink of an eye, he had to depend on Ling Han's power to reach the tree, which made him feel slightly embarrassed. To think that he was a foundation-building elite. "I owe you a favor," he said. He paused, then continued, "My name is Shen Hanyun." Ling Han did not even turn his head, and merely nodded. He felt that it was strange. If there was only the fruit-smashing attacks of the army of squirrels, though this might was very strong, could it protect the old locust tree and allow it to live for more than 1,000 years? Boom! Right at this moment, the trunk of the tree suddenly trembled greatly. A massive force surged out, forcefully shaking Ling Han off the trunk of the tree. What was going on? Ling Han wasn't the only one. Shen Hanyun was also sent flying off the tree. Pong pong! The two of them fell onto the ground. Thankfully, with their strength, they would not be injured even if they fell from a height of 300 meters. Neither of them was angered by this, and merely stared dumbly ahead of them. That old locust tree had already been uprooted from the ground, its colossal crown actually twisting and deforming. Innumerable branches entwined around each other, forming a dozen or so incredibly thick arms. Zhi, 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 zhi. The little squirrels poked their heads out from between the leaves, all of them very excited. The old tree was showing its might. Now it could destroy all the invaders. Boom! The old tree moved, swatting out two massive arms, which struck towards Ling Han and Shen Hanyun respectively. Ling Han, on the other hand, was relieved. The reason why the old locust tree could last for 1,000 years was because it itself also had powerful strength, and not just relying on the help of the little squirrels. And with this move from it, it meant that it was revealing its trump card. Ling Han raised his fist and clashed with the old locust tree. Pong! With a single strike, Ling Han was instantly smashed into the ground. Meanwhile, Shen Hanyun delivered a slash with his sword. Boom! Flames flickered, and this was a great threat to the tree man, causing the old tree to retract its arm in time. However, as the force of the blow swept past, it formed a powerful hurricane and forcibly extinguished the high-level flame energy. Goodness! This Lord Tree's power is really profound. Ling Han popped out of the ground. Though he was no match for the old locust tree's power, he himself was also powerful. This blow only caused his blood to boil slightly, and was far from being enough to wound him. Shwa! 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 The old locust tree shook its body, and instantly, several hundred fruits fell at the same time, as if it was raining, extremely densely. Run! Shen Hanyun cried out, and hurriedly leaped out of the way. If his cultivation level had not been suppressed, then no matter how strong the old locust tree was, he would be able to easily kill it with a single strike. But now he had to be careful, or it was possible that he would lose his life here. Ling Han didn't dare to face it head-on. The explosive damage of these fruits was far more terrifying than the direct bombardment of the old tree. The two of them dodged and had just dodged aside when the old locust tree delivered another 2 palm strikes. This old tree's attacks were actually quite organized. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Ling Han humphed. He stimulated the destructive energy. In any case, Shen Hanyun wouldn't be able to see the situation on his side when the black mass of palm strikes shot over. Pong! With a palm strike, Ling Han disappeared again. He was forcefully smacked into the ground. However, it was only an instant, and the old locust tree retreated continuously. Its leaves trembled madly, and a considerable number even fell off, as if it had suffered a great injury. A hole had shockingly appeared in the palm that it had struck Ling Han's with, and with this as the center, the surrounding leaves all turned yellow and withered. Destructive energy was too terrifying. Even this 1,000-year-old locust tree couldn't withstand it. Shen Hanyun was dumbfounded. What was going on here? Why had Ling Han suddenly become so powerful? Ling Han pressed his advantage. The heavenly pattern jade was already unleashed. His weight was completely compressed, and he shot it out, 14 times the speed of sound. The old locust tree's defenses were extremely high. This kind of creature all had similar characteristics, and that was they could withstand extremely strong attacks. In fact, it would not harm them much at all. The best method to deal with them was firstly, to cut them apart with a sharp weapon, and secondly, to burn them with raging flames. However, the heavens were just. While they gave the tree men extremely high defenses, they also gave them the disadvantage of being slow. Even if it was a 1,000-year-old locust tree, its speed was not all that impressive. At the very least, it could not possibly dodge an attack at 14 times the speed of sound. The heavenly pattern jade shot over. The old locust tree could only form its branches into an arm to parry this incoming strike. Pung, pung, pung. However, it could not block it. One arm, two, three, it smashed a hole forcefully into over a dozen arms. Under the tremendous ripping power of the heavenly pattern jade, it had even forcefully severed these arms. Thanks to the obstruction of these arms, however, the momentum of the heavenly pattern jade was finally used up. The strength of the tree man's defenses was clear for all to see. Ling Han was also surprised. He had actually failed to kill him with a single strike? Then let's do it again. He charged out, using the demonic monkey fists and the frequency attack with 70 overlapping layers of power. The old locust tree was indeed very strong. It was a creature of wood element, and its natural defenses were strong. Furthermore, it had lived for as long as 1,000 years. Though it could not break through to Celestial Path in Mystery Realm tier, it should be considered top tier. In front of it, to say nothing of 1-star geniuses, perhaps even 2-star geniuses wouldn't be able to get any advantage. However, the problem was that Ling Han was a prodigy who had surpassed 4 stars. Moreover, he had too many techniques. Heavenly pattern jade, destructive energy, frequency attack. Any one of them would be enough to elevate one's battle prowess greatly. Now, all of this was used by one person. How terrifying was that? The old locust tree couldn't hold on any longer, and broke into a run. On the treetop, those small squirrels were also squeaking, and some were even covering their eyes with their tiny paws. This human was too terrifying. How could there be such a monster? Shen Hanyun was also a little dazed. Ling Han had suddenly become so powerful, which was completely beyond his imagination. However, his reaction was also very fast, and he immediately intercepted the great locust tree. He definitely had to obtain the 1,000-year tree heart. Shua sword light swept past, and he went all out. The old locust tree was clearly very afraid of Ling Han, and actually chose to take Shen Hanyun's attack head-on. It was not willing to stop, and ran as fast as it could. The sword light slashed onto the old locust tree's body. This powerful defense was immediately displayed. This blow had left a deep mark on its body, but to its thick trunk, this deep mark was completely insignificant. Shen Hanyun roared in fury, and slashed repeatedly with his sword, sending out a powerful attack. Leopard stab. The sword chi shot out, and actually turned into a black panther that struck out at the old locust tree. However, after this strike was delivered, Shen Hanyun's face had also become completely pale. This move placed too much of a burden on him. It should be known that even if he recovered to the cultivation level of foundation building tier, he would only be able to use this attack a few times, what more when it was used in Mystery Realm tier. This caused his internal organs to be boiling, and the pain was indescribable. However, the might of this attack could not be underestimated either. The Black Panther was like a primitive age monster, and the impact actually caused the old locust tree to stumble and fall to the ground. Ling Han caught up with him, and the demonic monkey fists attacked him again. However, this time he didn't use destructive energy. This was already enough. Just how powerful were the repeated attacks compounded by 70 overlapping layers of power? With a single strike, the leaves of the old locust tree fell like rain. But of course, there were also fruits which fell off one after another. This was still quite dangerous, and possessed great destructive power. Even Ling Han had to dodge, not daring to take it head-on with his physique. It really wasn't worth it. Shen Hanyun was not idle either. He continued to attack from the sidelines. With each sword strike, the might could not be underestimated, and caused considerable trouble for the great locust tree. After several dozen moves, the large locust tree finally couldn't hold on any longer, and was blasted into two halves. Zil, the tree full of little squirrels, instantly scrambled, and only after they had fled to a safe place did they turn around, glaring furiously at Ling Han and Shen Hanyun, especially that purple-colored squirrel, whose facial expression was extraordinarily pronounced. Shen Hanyun took a deep breath and said, "Though I know that this is going too far, I still have to say, I need the 1,000-year tree heart." "You didn't come for the 1,000-year tree heart, did you? Instead, you came for the wood crystal element, right?" He paused for a moment before continuing. Ling Han nodded. "That's right. That makes things easier," Shen Hanyun said. "I'll use a wood element crystal to trade with you." And Ling Han was surprised. The other actually had a wood element crystal? Was this for real? Shen Hanyun explained, "This is not the first time I have come to the Ironwood Forest. The last time I came, I had killed a great many wood element creatures, and gathered a considerable amount of essence of wood. Added with the fact that I robbed others, there were a few people who had a considerable amount of essence of wood on them, and I collected them all, which just happened to be enough to form a wood element crystal." Ling Han pondered for a moment, before saying, "Fine, I'll trade. However, I didn't bring the wood element crystal with me. You need to go back with me," Shen Hanyun continued. "No matter what, a trip would not need a few months' time, so it was still worth it." "All right," Ling Han said with a nod. If he went back on his word, he could still make Tang Yuner appear. With the power of the battle armor, this little girl was capable of matching foundation-building tier elites. Shen Hanyun was overjoyed, and hurriedly went to dig out the tree heart. The 1,000-year-old locust had boundless life force, and its tree heart also had powerful life energy. It was an extremely good tonic. Of course, this could only nourish a mortal body. Otherwise, Shen Hanyun would definitely not be the only one who had set his eyes on the 1,000-year-old locust tree. They arrived at the outskirts of the forest, and after waiting for 2 days, the babies returned one after another. When they found out that Ling Han had quickly obtained a wood element crystal, they were all very surprised. This father of theirs was really too lucky, wasn't he? To be on the safe side, Ling Han had 6th baby stay in the forest to safeguard the essence of wood, so that their trip would not be wasted, and their previous efforts would not be wasted. One couldn't be unguarded against others. In any case, Shen Hanyun couldn't see 6th baby anyway, so it wouldn't cause any awkwardness. They left the Ironwood Forest and headed towards Shen Hanyun's hometown. Though Shen Hanyun was in the foundation building tier and had extraordinary battle prowess, he kept a very low profile and was not very well known. His hometown was Zhongclan Town, and the reason why he had done everything he could to obtain the 1,000-year tree heart was so that he could save someone. "A woman?" Tang Yuner immediately asked. She was a mischievous child. She had been released by Ling Han when Shen Hanyun was not paying attention, acting as if she had gone out to fight with element creatures like the 7 toddlers. Shen Hanyun nodded. He was a little reticent, and did not like to talk. "You like her?" the little girl asked again. Shen Hanyun did not answer, but a gentle expression appeared on his face. That must be the case. Ling Han couldn't help but look at him in a new light. He had never thought that this quiet person would actually have a gentle side to him. After arriving at the Zhongclan town, Shen Hanyun brought them to an elegant courtyard. "Fangyue! Fangyue!" Shen Hanyun called out, but no one answered. This courtyard was only so big. Shen Hanyun searched through the rooms one by one, and his expression couldn't help but become cold. He had not found her. "Brother Ling, this is your wood element crystal." He threw a green orb filled with life energy at Ling Han. This thing had been hidden in the courtyard all this while. Ling Han accepted it but didn't examine it closely. He put it away first, then said, "Go out and find someone to ask around." Shin Han Yun replied with a nod. He was also flustered because this matter concerned him personally. They asked the neighbors about the situation, and soon found out the whereabouts of that Miss Fangyue. She had gone to the sunken sand valley. Ling Han had initially thought that Miss Fangyue had been kidnapped by some evil tyrant. Afterward, it would be Shin Han Yun showing off his might, killing the evil tyrant, and rescuing his lover. He had never imagined that she would actually enter the sunken sand valley on her own. This place was very dangerous. There were many quicksand pits, and if one accidentally stepped on them, he would immediately sink in. The sand would cover him, and there was no way he could escape alive. Thus, it was extremely dangerous for even Mystery Realm tiers to enter. They hurriedly rushed to the sunken sand valley. With so many people, it would be easier to find her. The location wasn't far, and they arrived very quickly. Then they moved separately. There were not many people here, so if they encountered a young girl, it would definitely be Zhao Fangyue, Miss Zhao. Ling Han walked for a while, and soon saw a woman in green sitting on a rock ahead of him. Was this Zhao Fangyue, Miss Zhao? Han shouted, and as he gathered everyone over, he asked, "Miss Zhao?" The woman turned around, revealing an exquisite face. However, it was a little too pale, without a trace of blood. Ling Han smiled and said, "I am Shun Hanyun's friend. He has already obtained the 1,000-year tree heart. Your illness can be cured, and there is no need for you to have any lingering thoughts of death." Unexpectedly, this Miss Zhao actually did not have the slightest bit of joy. She merely cast a cold look at Ling Han, and then turned her face away, staring dumbly ahead of her. Could it be that it was the brain that had been injured? Ling Han stroked his chin, appearing slightly surprised. There was something off with this reaction. Shouldn't she be extremely happy now that she knew that her illness could be cured? Was there something that he didn't know? Ling Han didn't say anything either. In any case, the signal had already been sent, so he could just wait for Shin Han Yun to come. In a short while, a figure flew over. Ling Han was filled with envy. Foundation building tier cultivators could soar through the air, and this unrestrained and free feeling made his heart itch endlessly. Fortunately, he wasn't far from reaching the foundation building tier. "Fangyue!" Shun Han Yun descended, and an expression of relief appeared on his face. He quickly walked over and said softly, "The mountain winds here are strong, and you are not in good health. It would be best for you to return quickly." "Shin Han Yun, how many times have I told you? Don't interfere with my matters," Zhao Fangyue said coldly. This was definitely not the tone that a lover would speak with. Ling Han was astonished, yet he didn't say anything. He had only come to collect the wood element crystal, so he didn't need to be concerned about other matters. After a while, the little lowly and the 6 babies also ran over. "What's going on?" Tang Yun'er's expression was filled with curiosity. Her gossipy nature was clearly already burning fiercely. Just how young was she? "You already have the potential to become a chatterbox?" "See for yourself," Ling Han said in a low voice. On the other side, Shin Han Yun was coaxing Zhao Fangyue, but Zhao Fangyue wouldn't listen no matter what. Instead, her attitude became worse and worse, almost chasing him away with a sword. "You right, I'll leave. Don't get agitated." Shin Han Yun compromised. He took out the 1,000-year tree heart, which was stored in a jade box. "This is a 1,000-year tree heart, which can treat your chronic illness. I'll leave it here." With that said, he signaled Ling Han and the others with his eyes, and left quietly. Ling Han, Tang Yun'er, and the others were all a little stunned, but did not ask instead. They followed him out of the valley. When they had exited the valley, Shun Han Yun took the initiative to explain. It was a fact that he liked Zhao Fangyue, but that Miss Zhao did not like him. A few years ago, before Shin Han Yue had even advanced into the foundation building tier, he had traveled the world with his sword, and coincidentally encountered Zhao Fangyue and another man, Ma Teng. They felt like old friends at first sight, and very soon they became good friends. A melodramatic plot developed. He and Ma Teng had both fallen in love with Zhao Fengyue, and Zhao Fengyue was in love with Ma Teng. However, this did not ruin the friendship between the three of them, and they continued to adventure and a journey together. Not too long after, a disease erupted in Zhao Fengyue's body, and Shen Hanyun and Ma Teng went all over the world to find spiritual herbs for her. They had heard that there might be 1,000-year-old treasured ginseng in the sunken sand valley, so they had come to try their luck. In the end, their luck was ridiculously bad. Not only had they not obtained the 1,000-year-old treasured ginseng, but Ma Teng had instead sunk into the quicksand, and his life force had been swallowed. After this matter, Zhao Fengyue settled down in the vicinity of the sunken sand valley, commemorating her beloved. Meanwhile, Shun Hanyun was still searching for treasured medicines everywhere, which led to the matter of entering the ironwood forest twice. "So you have a one-sided love," Tang Yuner said frankly. "This damn child. Did she even know how to speak properly? Weren't you just rubbing salt into his wounds?" Ling Han hurriedly pulled the little lowly over, laughed loudly, and asked, "Brother Shun, what do you plan to do next?" Shin Hanyun was a little dazed. Previously, he only had one goal in his life, and that was to find the spiritual herb and save Zhao Fengyue. Now that this goal was accomplished, there was only emptiness left in his heart. She didn't love him, so there was no way that she would be with him. He was speechless. After a while, his eyes gradually became firm. "I want to continue to travel the world and become an outstanding swordsman," he said. This had always been his dream. It was only because of Zhao Fengyue's sudden illness that he had been running around all these years. Now, he had finally let go of his romantic feelings and regained his lofty aspirations. Ling Han smiled faintly. He could clearly see that Shin Hanyun had not truly let go of Zhao Fengyue. It was only now that he needed another goal for himself to persevere. Otherwise, it was possible that he would become a walking corpse. "Brother Ling, how many 5 elements crystals are you still missing?" Shin Hanyun suddenly asked. Ling Han was a little surprised. "Why are you so concerned about this?" However, he still answered, "Metal and earth." "All right, I'll help you gather these 2 types of essences first." Shin Hanyun nodded. "This makes me a little awkward," Ling Han said with a smile. He naturally hoped that a powerful helper could shorten the time for him to obtain the 5 elements crystals. But Shin Hanyun didn't owe him anything now. Shun Hanyun smiled, but his smile was completely devoid of humor. "I have nothing else to do now. Furthermore, I also need to change my mood." He had not walked out of this unrequited romance, so he needed to do something else to divert his longing. "All right," Ling Han nodded. Because 6th baby was still in Ironwood Forest, Ling Han found an excuse to split up with Shun Hanyun. They would meet back at the Golden Desert. The Golden Desert was the land of metal among the lands of 5 elements. Ling Han and his group first arrived at the Ironwood Forest and brought 6th baby with them. Then they flew towards the Golden Desert. Fortunately, the little lowly didn't smash anyone this time. The 2 times previously had given Ling Han a psychological trauma. Golden Desert did not mean that there was gold everywhere in the desert, but rather that the color of this sand was the same as gold. At a glance, it seemed to be paved with golden sand, so bright that it could blind one's eyes. This desert was very large and incredibly hot. There were very few plants that could grow and live here. Thus, those who would come here were basically here for the essence of metal. After collecting enough, they would be able to fuse it into a metal element crystal. "Father, will you make us work for nothing again this time?" the babies all asked. They had already wasted time twice in a row. Ling Han didn't know either. He stroked his chin and said, "Probably not." His luck was not that good either, that he would always be able to get a fortuitous encounter. "All right, then we will trust Father again." The babies nodded one after another. They moved separately and agreed to meet back here once every 5 days. Ling Han still brought the problematic little lowly with him as he walked into the desert. They had only taken a few steps when they felt their mouths go dry. Not long after, a fire scorpion crawled out from a crack between the rocks and launched a sneak attack at Ling Han and Tang Yuner. The ending was naturally very tragic. It had been stomped to death by Ling Han. Yet Ling Han gritted his teeth. This scorpion's shell was so hard that even his foot was slightly numb. The outer shell of this scorpion was made of metal, so it was especially sturdy. Even Ling Han felt his foot go numb. The scorpion died, leaving behind a little bit of the essence of metal. That was a speck of golden sand, but it was much brighter than the sand in the desert. Even if it was thrown into the sand, it would still stand out like a swan in a flock of chickens, and was very conspicuous. Ling Han put away this essence of metal and continued onwards. He returned to an extremely boring life of fighting monsters. Every day he would be searching for metal element creatures, killing them, and then obtain the essence of metal, working hard for the sake of becoming stronger in future. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Ling Han's cultivation progress was very fast. He encountered another node, and after crossing over, he opened another 9 apertures. Now, the number of apertures he had opened had reached 72. In truth, most people broke through to Mystery Realm tier in the second stage. Those who broke through in the first stage and the third stage belonged to the minority, and those who could open the hidden apertures were even rarer. The progress is a little slow. If that's the case, when I concoct the 5 elements karmic pill, I probably would not have cultivated Mystery Realm tier to the pinnacle level yet. In reality, it wasn't that Ling Han's cultivation speed was slow, but rather that he was obtaining the 5 elements crystals too quickly. One had to realize that it would take at least several hundred years for ordinary people to gather the 5 elements crystals with their own efforts. And as for him, it hadn't even been half a year, and he already had 3 5 elements crystals in his hands. With such a comparison, his cultivation speed naturally seemed slow. This was really a happy and annoying feeling. Several days later, he encountered a group of people who were also gathering the essence of metal. At first, he had been eating, but these people demanded that he hand over the essence of metal as soon as they came up. Ling Han naturally would not be reserved. Instead, he robbed them completely and even learned of a legend from their mouths. In the depths of the Golden Desert, there is a divine temple, and there is a supreme great opportunity hidden within. These people were professionals in collecting the essence of metal, because there would always be forces that wanted to concoct the 5 elements karmic pill for the sake of their descendants. In the various locations of the 5 elements, it was very easy to encounter people who collected the essence of the 5 elements. This time, the essence of metal that they had obtained had all been sold to the Pang clan. Furthermore, they still had another goal, and that was to find that divine temple, and from then onwards, cast off their lowly status and rise above others. However, the divine temple only existed in legends. Some people swore that they had seen it, but even more people had never seen it before. Moreover, everyone knew that signs of mirages could appear in the desert. Who knew what those people were looking at? In this group, there was one person who claimed to have seen that divine temple, and it was also because of his insistence that everyone kept chasing after that divine temple ambitiously, though they had already spent more than 30 years here. Ling Han only listened for the moment. His main target was naturally the 5 elements karmic pill. He wanted to perfect his foundations and advance to the peak of martial arts. He spared these people and continued to eat. The little lowly was curious and asked, "Ling Han, do you think we'll find the divine temple?" Rumors spread easily. "The trustability for this matter can't exceed 10%, Ling Han said. Handsome brother, you are really too lacking in optimism." Tang Yuner shook her head. "You should believe that with me here. Your luck will definitely be heaven-defying." Ling Han chuckled and said, "Just like how you've hit people a few times?" Tang Yuner was instantly embarrassed. Then, she argued, "Do you know the law of conservation of luck? If you're too lucky, it's inevitable that you'll have some bad luck. That's how you can be so lucky again." Hee. Somewhere in the desert. "Your Imperial Highness, we have already searched here for several dozen days, and have almost used up all the water and food. Should we leave for now, and go out to replenish our supplies first?" An old man in gray robes asked respectfully. There were a total of 8 of them, and they were all wearing cloaks on their heads, appearing very mysterious. However, they were presently eating, so they still showed their faces. There was a young man and 7 old men. The young man looked to be in his 20s, and had a sturdy build. He had broad eyebrows and bright eyes. Though he was only sitting there, he had a captivating aura. The 7 old men all had different appearances, but they were all led by the young man, appearing to be very reverent. Because this young man was the heir of the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire, his status was astonishing. On the surface, the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire was a sect master tier-level force, but there was still an old venerate tier overseeing it. Thus, the Majestic Empire was able to rule over a galaxy, and the force was astonishingly large. Furthermore, such a large force was also extremely careful in selecting heirs. In order to ensure that their leader was definitely the most outstanding, every member of the imperial family, after showing enough natural talent, could become an imperial prince. However, once their cultivation level could not keep up, or if they had made some great mistake, their title as an imperial prince would be revoked, and they would never be able to become an imperial prince again. Thus, there were around 100 heirs to the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire, and their ages varied. There were old heirs that were over 1,000 years old, and there were also those like this young man who were only in their 20s. His name was Meng Yangcheng, and he was currently ranked 97th among the imperial princes. This was a very low ranking, but taking into account his age, it could be said that his future was limitless. That's right, Your Imperial Highness. The Divine Temple is only hearsay, so who knows if it exists or not. Another old man advised, Your Imperial Highness, you are too precious, so why don't you have a search for it in your place? If we really discover the Divine Temple, it would not be too late to inform Your Imperial Highness. Meng Yangcheng humphed and said, What do you guys know? At that time, the Divine Temple retreated into the Golden Desert on its own volition. After so many years, it has only been witnessed by a limited number of people. That is because it itself is active. By the time you guys inform me, it would already be too late. The 7 old men were all surprised. Could it be that the legend of the Divine Temple was actually true? Meng Yangcheng opened his mouth and did not plan to stop talking. He continued, 30,000 years ago, the Buddhist race wanted to teach Tao here, and our empire naturally would not allow that. The Buddhist race specializes in bewitching people. If everyone became their believer, would this galaxy still be ruled by the surname of Meng? Great Ancestor Emperor mobilized all the elites to engage in a fierce war with the Buddhist race. Though we successfully defeated them, we could not completely destroy them. The surviving dregs steered the Divine Temple and entered into the Golden Desert. The so-called Divine Temple is their means of traversing the galaxy. In itself, it is a powerful spirit tool. However, the Great Ancestor Emperor has confirmed that even if the surviving dregs have fled into the desert, they are all severely injured and would soon die completely. However, it was also because of that battle that the Great Ancestor Emperor was severely injured, so he could only pass on the throne and enter seclusion to heal his injuries. Otherwise, with this invasion of the Shadow Moon Majestic Empire, we wouldn't be in such a passive situation, losing a considerable number of resources. Meng Yangcheng said, his expression slightly dark. The 7 elders didn't dare to reply, and they were internally stunned. As it turned out, the legend of the Divine Temple was not only true, but also involved the Great Ancestor Emperor, who was also that venerate tier. And if Ling Han were here, he would be able to deduce some things. For example, why didn't the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire send someone to the Celestial Sea Planet to take a look at the formation seals? They were being invaded by another Majestic Empire, and were currently in a terrible state. How could they have the energy to care about a prison? Your Imperial Highness, since the Divine Temple is left behind by dregs of the Buddhist race, if you insist on searching for it, it would be extremely disadvantageous for Your Imperial Highness if it is reported by the other Imperial Princes, an elder advised. Meng Yangcheng smiled faintly. If I can find the Divine Temple, that would be a great merit. The 7 old men all looked curious, but Meng Yangcheng didn't explain further. Because in the Divine Temple there was the inheritance of the Buddhist race, and what kind of existence was the Buddhist race? In the past, there had been an ancestral king and he had ruled over an era. just how astonishing was the inheritance of the Buddhist race. Even if the inheritance in the Divine Temple was definitely not complete, and there was only a portion, it was still enough to tempt even saints. In the past, the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire had strictly sealed off the news, because they did not want to alert the saints. However, the old emperor was severely injured, and was unable to suppress the heaven and earth of the Golden Desert. He could only look on helplessly, and let things drag out until now. Meng Yongqing was extremely confident. He would definitely be able to find the Divine Temple, because no one knew that he had even secretly learnt the Buddhist race's cultivation technique. Though it was only superficial, after entering into the Golden Desert, the cultivation technique and the Divine Temple would resonate. Thus, he would definitely be able to find it. Ling Han fought monsters every day, being blown by the strong winds, and being assailed by yellow sand. After more than a month, it was as if he had become a completely different person. With a casual jump, he could shake off 1 kilogram of sand from himself. He was already numb, and practically wanted to throw up. Thankfully, the amount of essence of metal in his possession was also steadily increasing. He was sure that with another half a month's time, he would be able to fuse the metal element crystal. At least for the next 10 years, I'll stay away from deserts. After such a long time, Ling Han opened another 18 apertures, and the total number had reached as many as 90. Handsome brother, are my eyes playing tricks on me? Or is there really a temple ahead? Tang Yuner suddenly said. Ling Han was walking like a walking corpse, and when he heard this, he raised his head, only to see that a grand temple with golden walls had really appeared ahead of him. It was incredibly majestic. He glanced at it and was still numb. Just a mirage, ignore it. But it looks quite real, Tang Yuner said. Heh! Ling Han didn't react at all. Let's go. The little lowly pulled Ling Han and walked towards the large temple. However, even though the large temple was just ahead of them, after walking for less than half a day, they did not see it coming any closer at all. Is it really a desert mirage? The little lowly was bored out of her mind. I'm about to die from fury. I'm done playing. She wormed into the essence nurturing gourd. Though the space inside would also be affected by the outside world, and would be a little hot and dry, it was many times better than the outside world. Ling Han didn't react at all. Now, he would only erupt with killing intent when he encountered metal element creatures. And all of a sudden, a sound rang out by Ling Han's ear, reaching directly into his divine sense. It was like a loud and sobering bell, causing him to immediately awaken from his muddle-headed state. This was a Buddhist chant. Ling Han's feet paused, and he looked ahead. Involuntarily, he couldn't help but look stunned. Could it be that this wasn't a desert mirage, but a real large temple? The legendary Divine Temple? No way, what kind of luck did he have? This was his first time entering into the Golden Desert, and it had only been a little over a month, and he had actually encountered a Divine Temple that a great many people would never be able to encounter in their whole lives. If they had only seen it with their eyes, it could still be a desert mirage. But if they heard the chanting in their ears, it would be a different story. Ling Han used the imminent skyline technique, but after his figure moved, he discovered that not only had the distance between him and the Divine Temple not shortened, it had instead become larger. What the hell was this? He activated his eye technique and carefully observed the surroundings. He couldn't help but give an "oh." That was indeed a Divine Temple, but under the refraction of light, and added with the fact that the Divine Temple itself was somewhat mysterious, it caused an illusion to appear. If they were aiming for the Divine Temple, they would never be able to reach it in this lifetime. What the Buddhist race often talks about is that the sea of suffering is boundless, and it is difficult to cross to the other shore. Now, this desert is a sea of suffering, and the Divine Temple is the other shore. How am I supposed to cross it? Ling Han's eyes lit up. If it were anyone else, they really wouldn't be able to do anything. However, he was different. Not only had he obtained an eye technique, but he was also a grandmaster of formations, and using the two together, Ling Han could unravel the power of heaven and earth. He began to move. He was no longer walking in a straight line, but was instead continuously changing the direction of his advance. The divine temple was gradually approaching, and the sound of Buddhist chants was getting louder and louder. In fact, one could even see multiple Buddhas appear on the divine temple, casting amazing techniques that could redeem the world and expiate the dead. After walking for a whole half an hour, Ling Han finally arrived in front of the divine temple. It was clear that this divine temple was only 300 meters tall, but Ling Han felt like he was incomparably tiny as he stood underneath the divine temple. This divine temple seemed to be the center of the universe, indescribably majestic. He could see very clearly that on the murals of the divine temple, there were multiple arhats of fury, as well as bodhisattvas with dignified appearances, and there were also smiling Buddhas. Ling Han suddenly turned his head and saw that there was a group of 8 people approaching from behind. Strange, there was actually someone that could come here? They also have an eye technique, and they have also mastered formation techniques. However, Ling Han didn't know that Meng Yangcheng was even more stunned than Ling Han. He had relied on the Buddhist race's cultivation technique to resonate with the divine temple, and only then was he able to avoid being confused and come here. However, what did Ling Han rely on? "Who are you?" Meng Yangcheng asked. His tone was calm, but his words had the arrogance of a command. Could not be helped. His identity was clear for all to see. Ling Han merely smiled faintly. Did he need to pay him any heed? Did he need to care? "My lord is asking you a question," an elder immediately rebuked. Ling Han still didn't answer. He only showed his fists. The attitudes of these people made him extremely displeased. "Thus, if you don't like it, come fight me. The matter of the divine temple is very important." Meng Yangcheng thought for a moment. Kill him to keep the secret." "Yes, your Imperial Highness." The 7 old men all obeyed solemnly. Your Imperial Highness? There was only one majestic empire on the Moonlight Planet. Was this guy the Imperial Prince of the Azure Dragon Empire? An old man leaped out and charged towards Ling Han. The other old men were all watching, obviously filled with confidence in that person. Ling Han's killing intent also rose. "You guys want to kill me? Then I'll kill you guys first." He directly used his body as a weapon and crashed towards that old man. Pong! Ling Han was like a cannonball, completely ignoring the old man's defenses as he forcefully crashed into his arms. Then, the old man screamed in pain as his body was sent flying, falling onto the ground on his behind. Meng Yangcheng and the others were shocked, because the old man's chest had suddenly caved in, as if there was a wash basin embedded in it. This was too terrifying, wasn't it? With just a crash, he had injured a Celestial Path elite to this extent? Of course, this place had a suppression effect on cultivation level, but this was still an extremely terrifying thing. Attack together! The remaining 6 elders all paled in shock and hurriedly charged out. However, what use was this? Ling Han charged over, unleashing a murderous aura. The 6 elders were all affected, and they all wore dazed expressions. Humph! Meng Yangcheng moved and delivered a palm strike at Ling Han. Ling Han threw a punch to block this attack. This naturally had an effect on his attack. Another punch shot out, and though it sent the 6 old men flying, it ultimately did not cause any damage. "I never thought that your battle prowess would actually be so astonishing," Meng Yangcheng humphed, his face filled with wariness. In the outside world, he could easily stomp Ling Han to death. However, in this place where his cultivation level was limited, he could only unleash the battle prowess of a Mystery Realm tier. He didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. Ling Han didn't reply, instead replying with a powerful attack. He would never show mercy to those who bore him malicious intent. Meng Yangcheng no longer sat by and watched, and also joined the battle. Furthermore, he was the main force. He took out a sword. The green blade exuded a terrifying murderous aura, possessing an indescribable might. This was the precious treasure of the Azure Dragon Empire, the Azure Dragon Sword, a replica of the Azure Dragon Sword. It belonged to the category of standard spirit tool, and would be equipped by the majority of heirs. Even though it was a replica, it was far more powerful than a spirit tool of the same level. Schwa, the sword swept out, and the image of the azure dragon appeared. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, its aura soaring to the heavens. The 6 old men cooperated. They didn't attack Ling Han, but rather walked with strange steps, supplementing surge after surge of power to Meng Yongqing. This was a formation. Ling Han was surprised. This was really amazing. Combining the power of 7 people together, and then unleashed by one person, the might was far stronger than the combined power of 7 people. The azure dragon roared as the sword chi slashed over. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Ling Han humphed and threw a punch. 70 layers of power stacked together, and it was a frequency attack at that. Pung, the force of the punch landed on the sword chi. The projection of the azure dragon trembled slightly and instantly shattered. "What?" Meng Yongqing's expression changed drastically. The 7 of them working together were actually still unable to suppress Ling Han. Just how freakish was this guy's battle prowess? 2-star genius? Or even 3-star genius? If he had known that Ling Han was only an enlightenment tier, he would definitely have guessed that Ling Han was a 4-star genius, or even 5-star genius. Ling Han let out a battle cry and blasted the demonic monkey fists towards Meng Yongqing. "You are too arrogant," Meng Yongqing exclaimed lightly. His present battle prowess was not inferior to Ling Han. Hong, his right hand shot out sword chi, while his left hand formed into a palm and struck out repeatedly at Ling Han. The 2 of them exchanged blows. After obtaining the power boost from the 6 people, Meng Yongqing's power was actually far superior to Ling Han's. However, Ling Han had grasped frequency attack and could attack the strong while he himself was weak, but was not the slightest bit weaker. At this moment, the 2 of them were in a deadlock. Actually, it was very simple to defeat Meng Yongqing. As long as he killed those 6 old men, he would no longer have the power boost, and his battle prowess would naturally decline. However, Meng Yongqing obviously knew this as well. He protected the 6 old men very well. This was a little like an eagle catching chicks. Ling Han was an eagle, the 6 old men were chicks, and Meng Yongqing was the mother of the chicks. This scene was very funny. If the little loli appeared at this time, her eyes would definitely light up and say that she wanted to play with them. Meng Yongqing was also speechless, and even a little embarrassed. He was the heir of the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire, and his status was extremely high. However, a mere Mystery Realm tier was actually capable of fighting him to a tie, which made him feel humiliated. Thankfully, there were not many people here that could get close, so there was no need to worry that this matter would be exposed. His killing intent grew even stronger. This Ling Han was so strong, yet he was still able to come here, which made him see him as a great threat. Could it be that this was a member of the Buddhist race that was competing with him for the great opportunity? "Die!" he shouted loudly. He suddenly took a deep breath, and it was as if his whole person had been blown up. He actually swelled up and turned into a giant that was as tall as 30 meters. Boom, he delivered another strike, and sword chi that was as thick as a great tree slashed over, its might skyrocketing. What secret technique was this? Meng Yongqing's battle prowess increased explosively, but the 6 old men all looked ashen, their vitality greatly depleted. They all complained incessantly because to use such a powerful move, they would have to extract the power of 7 people, and only then would they barely be able to do so. But now that one person was gone, the burden on each of them would be greatly increased, so they naturally could not bear it. But there was nothing that could be done. Meng Yongqing was completely the core of this secret technique, and he had the complete initiative. As long as he did not stop, the 6 of them would only be continuously absorbed. Thus, they only had one thought, and that was Meng Yongqing had to kill Ling Han as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would be in deep trouble. Hong! 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 Meng Yongqing was incomparably fierce. After enlarging, his power increased greatly. Even Ling Han's frequency attack couldn't completely dissipate his offensive. He had completely taken the initiative, his sword and palm extremely domineering. Ling Han was completely capable of stalling for time. Behind this kind of strength, he would definitely be killing the goose that lay the golden egg, the 6 old men. However, how could someone like him be willing to use this kind of method to win? How could it be that he could not win in a head-on confrontation? Ling Han let out a battle cry, and the barrage of murderous aura surged towards Meng Yangcheng. Even in his current state, Meng Yangcheng was still affected, and paused slightly. However, it was only for an instant. He immediately recovered, but it was inevitable that a flaw had appeared. Come! Ling Han used the 3 styles of the God of War. Instantly, it was as if the heaven and earth were centered around him, and boundless energy converged. He shot out a palm strike and energy surged out. Meng Yangcheng revealed an expression of fear, but there was already no way for him to dodge. He could only grit his teeth and face Ling Han head-on. Boom! He and Ling Han clashed in close-quarter combat, and felt Ling Han's power surge towards him in an extremely terrifying manner. He had finally withstood this attack, but he was immediately shocked, because Ling Han had delivered a second attack. How was this possible? How could he use such a violent attack twice in a row? Is your power unlimited? Is your body forged from divine metal? Aren't you afraid of shattering? There was nothing else that could be done. He could only grit his teeth and continue the barrage. With a bang, he felt like his body was about to collapse, and the 6 old men behind him all spat out blood. They were one and the same, and a loss to one would mean a loss to all of them. However, this was not the end. The 3 styles of the God of War naturally had a total of 3 moves. Ling Han gave a loud shout and delivered his 3rd attack. This time he couldn't withstand it. Meng Yangcheng thought. He made a prompt decision, cutting his losses and directly dispersing this impact, allowing the 6 old men behind him to bear it. He was the core of this formation and also the guide. Of course, he could do this. Pong! The surging power surged past, and the expressions of the 6 old men changed drastically. This was a destructive power. Your Imperial Highness! They released cries of despair, but Meng Yangcheng completely ignored them. Pong, 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 pong. The 6 of them were all shattered by the terrifying power. Pooh! Meng Yangcheng also spat out a mouthful of blood. He no longer wanted to continue fighting, and turned around and left. Ling Han chased after him for a few steps, and felt his chest boil violently. He stopped, and did not pursue him any further. The might of the 3 styles of the God of War was too strong, but precisely because of this, the burden on Ling Han was also incredibly great. Previously, he had only used it once and had not used it again. Even if he was already an enlightenment tier, it was still a great pressure for him to use. It was only after a few breaths that Ling Han's blood and qi calmed down. His physique was too tough, and after a few moments of rest, he had more or less recovered. However, he was still unable to immediately channel the 3 styles of the God of War. That would be asking for his own suffering or even courting death. At this time, Meng Yangcheng had already disappeared, so Ling Han didn't pursue him. Even if he used the imminent skyline, it was useless. With Meng Yangcheng's intelligence, he probably wouldn't walk a straight line. Ling Han let the little loli out. The Divine Temple? Tang Yuner was surprised. Then, she pointed at Ling Han. Damn handsome brother. Didn't you say that was a desert mirage? Tvi already brought you in. So why are you complaining so much? Ling Han said with a smile. The little loli pouted, but she was immediately attracted by the Divine Temple. Let's go in and take a look. I'm so curious. Ling Han was also slightly curious, and the 2 of them walked towards the door. The large temple was incredibly majestic, its golden walls brilliant, but it was obvious that it had suffered great damage. There were multiple cracks on the walls. Some seemed to be sword marks, some were saber marks, and some seemed to have been clawed out with bare hands. If Meng Yangcheng was here, he would know that these marks of damage were left behind by the great battle all those years ago. Tens of thousands of years ago, the Buddhist race had used this temple as a stronghold to advance all the way, and only when the old emperor moved was their advance stopped. The doors to the Divine Temple were closed, but the doors themselves had been damaged, revealing a massive hole that they could easily worm through. The 2 of them entered. And I? The chanting sounded again. This is the 6 figures bright king curse. The little loli immediately called out, her face filled with shock. What bright king curse? Ghost king curse? Ling Han grabbed the little lowly. This is one of the ultimate techniques of the Buddhist race. The 9 figures of truth are capable of suppressing all enemies in the world, while the 6 characters Bright King Curse is capable of eliminating evil and enlightening the mind. The little lowly chattered, like a little sparrow. You have to know that the Buddhist race is most skilled in dealing with ghosts and evil beasts. Furthermore, they are also very skilled in eliminating internal demons. If you learn this 6 characters Bright King Curse, you basically won't have to worry about being disturbed by evil beasts in the future, and you won't have to worry about having internal demons either. Shitty handsome brother, do you know that after advancing into Celestial Path, every increase in cultivation level would mean being disturbed by an internal demon? Heavenly Tao tests the heart, and there is a possibility of becoming a demon at the slightest provocation. However, if you have learnt the 6 figures Bright King Curse, the chances of becoming a demon will be 90% lesser. In this world, who knows how many people want to learn the 6 characters Bright King Curse? Only then did Ling Han's heart stir, and he said, "Isn't that simple? Wouldn't it be fine if we just listened for a while?" The little lowly rolled her eyes. The 6 words are n, ma, and I, pay, me, and ku. Everyone knows this, but to simply say that these 6 words are the Bright King Curse, that would be too easy, wouldn't it? There's a secret to this, and it also requires a combination of Buddhist cultivation techniques. Ling Han gave an O. That so-called Imperial Highness should also have come for the 6 characters Bright King Curse. So this place should have the inheritance of the Buddhist race. Let's hurry up and find it, the little lowly said excitedly. If I can learn it, then maternal grandfather, paternal grandfather, and the others will definitely praise me. Ling Han nodded. He had never been one to enjoy the benefits alone. Since the little lowly could also come here, it meant that she was fated with Buddhism, and he was already beginning to imagine how the little lowly would look like if she shaved her head. The temple was not dark. There were multiple stone Buddhas inside, and every Buddha was glowing, their postures different. The 2 of them arrived at the end of the temple and saw that there was a giant Buddha sitting there. It was as tall as 30 meters and had a crystalline golden body. It looked majestic, and the sound of chanting was precisely coming from here. Could be claimed to be a divine miracle. In front of the giant Buddha there were 12 mats which were divided into 2 rows, one in front and one at the back, and there were 6 mats in each row. And now there were 5 people sitting cross-legged on these 12 mats. Some were tall, some were short, and the shortest was only the size of a thumb, while the tallest was like a meter-tall guardian deity. Ling Han had already examined them with his eye technique. These 5 people were all corpses, but although they were dead, they still had a kind of might. They should have been very powerful when they were alive. These 5 people were all dressed in Buddhist robes, and should be people from the Buddhist race. The Buddhist race was a general name. As long as one believed in Buddhism, they could be called a member of the Buddhist race. Thus, these 5 people clearly came from different races yet could belong to the Buddhist race. These 5 people were definitely not saints. Though there was still lingering power after their deaths, it was not so strong that they could not be approached. Ling Han circled around the 5 of them once, and discovered that there were obvious injuries on their bodies. Their religious robes had been pierced, and they were all fatally wounded. So strange. They didn't think of a way to treat their injuries, or find a place to rest in peace, but actually sat cross-legged on a mat? Where's the inheritance? Where's the inheritance? The little lowly spun around M circles. She didn't have the slightest interest in dead people and the Buddha statue. The 2 of them searched everywhere, but even after searching the entire temple, they did not find anything that looked like an inheritance. Sigh, what a waste of effort. Tang Yuner shrugged her shoulders and said, "Perhaps these people knew that they would definitely die, so they destroyed the inheritance." This was indeed possible. They were unwilling to give up. They searched for another day, but still came up empty-handed. The divine temple legends are all lies. The little lowly pouted. It's extremely immoral to lie to children. The 2 of them exited the divine temple. There was a small plaza outside, and there was a Bodhi tree growing there. However, it had long since wilted, and there was even half of it missing, making for a very desolate sight. The Bodhi tree was the spiritual totem of the Buddhist race. According to legends, the Buddhist ancestor comprehended Tao underneath the Bodhi tree. A thought suddenly flashed through Ling Han's mind. Could this Bodhi tree be the true inheritance? No one made it a rule that the inheritance had to be carried out inside the temple. Ling Han walked over and began to study the Bodhi tree. Handsome brother, you're really smart. Tang Yuner ran over as well. She naturally knew of the legend of the Bodhi tree. The two of them studied it together, but no matter how they observed, this was a dead Bodhi tree. Let's go. Tang Yuner was obviously an impatient person. Moreover, she was only a few years old. Don't be impatient, Ling Han said. Boring. The little loli took out some candy and began licking it. Ling Han sat down in a cross-legged position. Since Buddha had comprehended Tao underneath the Bodhi tree, would he be able to pass on the Tao of Buddha underneath the Bodhi tree? He sat down, but nothing happened. There was no enlightenment, nor was there a harsh warning. There was nothing. Handsome brother, don't waste time, the little loli said from the side. Let's wait for a while longer, Ling Han said. The day passed, and night fell. The golden moon hung high in the sky, casting a gentle light. The little loli had already fallen into a deep slumber. She had no worries, so she could naturally eat and sleep leisurely. Was he really unable to obtain the inheritance? Ling Han thought internally. He decided that if there was still no change by tomorrow morning, he would leave. When the moon reached the middle of the sky, a sudden change took place. At first, the Bodhi tree had already wilted, and in fact, even half of its crown had been sliced off. However, when the moon reached the middle of the sky, it began to regrow under the nourishment of the moonlight, and the crown that had disappeared reappeared. En, ma, and I, ba, mi, gu. The 6 characters Bright King Curse sounded continuously. A breeze blew over, and the Bodhi tree vibrated slightly. The leaves rustled, producing a pleasant sound. Ling Han hurriedly patted the little loli's head, waking her up. What are you doing? I want to sleep. Tang Yuner stretched lazily, her eyes hazy, her expression filled with bitterness and deep hatred. What she hated the most was being woken up when she was sleeping soundly. She would be upset even if it was her own mother waking her up. Idiot! You don't want the inheritance of the Buddhist race? Ling Han called out. Ah! The little loli was quick-witted, and immediately lost her sleepiness. Her eyes widened, and she naturally saw this amazing scene as well. Where's the inheritance? She asked. Don't speak. Just watch carefully. The Bodhi tree swayed continuously, and after an unknown amount of time, a monk in a Buddhist robe suddenly appeared. He sat cross-legged under the Bodhi tree, and his head was completely bald. However, there was actually a halo of light around him. Having sprouted a Buddhist ring, this is a great elite of the Buddhist race. The little loli knew what was what, and immediately whispered, Is it that person? Ling Han asked. He was naturally referring to the ancestral Buddha, the ancestral king who had founded the Buddhist race's territory, invincible in this world for an era. The little loli shook her head. Impossible. If ancestral Buddha left a shadow, then his aura would be extremely terrifying. We couldn't possibly be so close. This should be a bodhisattva. According to the hierarchy of the Buddhist race, ancestral Buddha represented the ancestral king, the Buddha represented the saint, the bodhisattva represented the venerate tier, and the arhat represented the sect master, so this was a venerate tier. Even on the Moonlight planet, this was still a top-notch great elite. Ling Han couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Would this bodhisattva teach him the 6 characters Bright King Curse? However, what disappointed the two of them was that this monk was only sitting cross-legged and cultivating. What inheritance was there? Had he waited for nothing again? Ling Han was unwilling to give up. After a long while, a leaf fell. The Bodhi tree had long since withered to death, so how could it have leaves? Ling Han stretched out a hand. Coincidentally, the tree leaf landed near him, and he easily caught it in his hand. Instantly, an indescribable power surged violently inside Ling Han's body, turning into a majestic voice that was chanting something. Seemed like a song, but also seemed like a chant. Ling Han's heart clenched. Could this be the inheritance of the Buddhist race? He hurriedly focused on capturing every single word, but they were extremely vague, and it was extremely difficult to capture them. After half a day, he finally grasped one word, and of the 6 characters Bright King Curse. This was the 6 characters Bright King Curse? Ling Han opened his mouth, and boom! An indescribable power surged out, bright and clear, and thought-provoking. In fact, one could even see the glow of Buddha. Ling Han, have you learnt the 6 characters Bright King Curse? The little lol got a scare. Though she could also shout the word N, without a special cultivation technique to coordinate with it, this was only an ordinary word, and did not have any special effects. Ling Han wanted to capture it again, but the leaf in his hand had already turned into shards of light, not leaving a single bit behind. The power in his body disappeared, and the majestic voice also disappeared. Ling Han was astonished. Had he really learnt a single word? He recalled and then came to a realization. As it turned out, the process of capturing sound was the process of cultivation. The fact that he could hear the word and meant that he had successfully grasped the cultivation technique. This kind of teaching was really amazing. Ling Han explained to the little lowly, making the little lowly excited. Ling Han, the next leaf is mine, she emphasized. Ling Han chuckled before turning around to leave. He also needed to stabilize himself. Though he could recite the word N, he was not very proficient, and needed to practice hard. Furthermore, there were too many details that needed to be studied. The little lowly waited for the second leaf to fall, while Ling Han was perfecting his enchant. However, Tang Yuner waited for an entire night without any results. When the sun rose on the second day, the strange phenomenon disappeared, and the Bodhi tree became wilted and shriveled again. What leaf was left? I'm about to die from fury. I didn't sleep all night, the little lowly shouted in anger. Meanwhile, Ling Han faced the rising sun and started to cultivate. He had to speed up his cultivation and advance into the mystery realm tier as soon as possible. Ling Han and Tang Yuner naturally wouldn't leave since they hadn't obtained the 6 characters Bright King Curse yet. They would rest during the day and wait for night to come for a fierce battle. However, Ling Han only slept for 4 hours and he was already energetic. He once again studied the enchant. Even though there was only one word combined with the cultivation technique, there were all kinds of changes. It could suppress evil, it could clear one's mind, and it was profound and deep. After a whole day, Ling Han couldn't contain his joy. The 6 characters Bright King Curse was indeed worthy of being the ultimate technique of the Buddhist race. The significance was extremely great. Using it to shout at himself would allow his spirit to become even more stable. This was natural. His own spirit was not stable enough, so how could he speak of suppressing evil and expelling the demons? At night, the moon hung high in the sky, and the strange phenomenon reappeared. The Bodhi tree shone brilliantly again, and all the wilted leaves instantly grew out, adorning the entire tree. Not long after that, Bodhisattva appeared again, comprehending Tao underneath the Bodhi tree. Because he had grasped an character, he naturally understood a portion of Dharma. Ling Han instantly saw through even more. That Bodhisattva's comprehension was not completely unchanged. The leaves of the Bodhi tree dimmed and glowed, and there was a mysterious rhythm to it. He grasped this rhythm, and couldn't help but immerse himself in it. Vaguely, he discovered that there was Buddhist chanting in his mind, which was thought-provoking, and made him acknowledge it from the spiritual level. He wanted to submit, and from now onwards it was his duty to expiate evil. Ling Han suddenly faltered, and couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. This Buddhist technique was too terrifying. He had only comprehended it for a short while, and he was actually immersed in it. His spirit was bewitched, and he wanted to convert into Buddhism. Was this the power of the ancestral king? This was practically besieging cities and plundering land without spilling blood. Once he unleashed his Dharma, everyone under the heavens would be enlightened. Ling Han hurriedly guarded his mind. He was only interested in the 6 characters Bright King Curse, but definitely did not want to become a member of the Buddhist race and be restricted by the rules of the Buddhist race. The night passed, and Ling Han's understanding of the character increased slightly. However, the little lowly had waited for nothing the entire night, because no leaves of the Bodhi tree had fallen at all. She was so angry that she directly jumped up, wanting to pluck at herself. In the end, a massive power descended, causing her to fall solidly. "Little Toffee, I think you're destined to have no chance with Buddhism," Ling Han said with a smile. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it." The little lowly placed her hands on her hips, her face filled with fury. Why was it that such a stupid uncle could learn it, but she, an intelligent child, couldn't? The two of them continued to stay here determinedly. At night, Ling Han grasped the rhythm of the Bodhi tree leaves and comprehended their amazing techniques. Meanwhile, the little lowly stared at the top of her head, waiting for the leaves to fall. Day after day, time passed very quickly. After 9 days, Ling Han had completely mastered the enchant. He opened his mouth to chant, and the sound of Buddha was vast and mighty. If one didn't look at him, they would think that this was a bald monk. Ling Han was very satisfied, but the little lowly was depressed to the extreme. There was still no second leaf that fell from the tree. Damn it, she was being bullied here. However, by the 10th day, Ling Han still hadn't been able to derive anything from the Bodhi tree. Repeating it again and again, it was only the elaboration of the enchant. This was an inheritance of only one character? Ling Han pondered for a moment before coming to a sudden realization. The Bodhi tree had already wilted and been destroyed, and the inheritance had also been destroyed. It was already extremely fortunate that he had been able to learn a complete character. He related this deduction to Tang Yuner, and the little lowly was naturally very disappointed. "Handsome brother, then pass it on to me," she said. Ling Han shook his head. It wasn't that he didn't want to teach her, but rather that he couldn't. Otherwise, the Buddhist race didn't need the Bodhi inheritance or whatnot. Wouldn't it be much simpler to just pass it on by word of mouth? You see, he had waited here for 9 days, and only then did he learn a single chant of it. This efficiency was really too low. "Forget it. I'm not going to learn anymore." Tang Yuner was peeved, and she was extremely unhappy. If it was any other adult, they would definitely continue to stay. Even if they only obtained the character, it was a supreme secret technique. But who asked this little lowly to only be 6 or 7 years old? How could a 6 or 7-year-old child consider so much? She would definitely be throwing a tantrum. "You really don't want to learn anymore?" Ling Han asked. "No." Tang Yuner shook her head, her attitude resolute. "If you don't want to learn, then don't." Ling Han originally wanted her to stay here, while he himself went to get the essence of metal. In any case, the little girl wouldn't be of much help. The two of them left, and began their journey of fighting monsters again. A few days later, they reunited with the 7 babies. "Father, you've disappeared for several days. Did you have another fortuitous encounter? Did the essence of metal we gathered go to waste again?" 4th baby asked. Ling Han smiled and said, "How's that possible? I did have a fortuitous encounter, but I didn't obtain the metal element crystal." He related the matter of obtaining the 6 characters Bright King Curse, which also surprised the babies. "Father, could it be that you have the bloodline of the Buddhist race?" 3rd baby bit her finger and said, "Otherwise, why would the Bodhi tree recognize you and cast down leaves? Is there something like that?" Tang Yuner's eyes widened, and she instantly felt extremely displeased. As it turned out, she had really gone to all this trouble for nothing? Ling Han shook his head. He definitely didn't have any relationship with the Baldies. Moreover, he said, "Isn't the Buddhist race a collective name? What bloodline would there be?" "Father, you don't know about this, do you?" Eldest baby shook her head. "The Buddhist race also has a bloodline, but it is not birthing children in the traditional sense, but rather there is speaking of reincarnation of the great elites of the Buddhist race. Some infants are born proficient in Buddhism, and will definitely become great elites of the Buddhist race." "Father, are you a reincarnated Buddha?" Second baby stroked Ling Han's head and said, "Father, if you convert to Buddhist race one day, you'll lose your hair. While it's still here, let's hurry up and look at it," fifth baby said with a smile. And the other children nodded respectively. Ling Han's expression was dark. "I won't become a monk. He had many wives and children, so how could he become a monk?" Tang Yuner interjected in an untimely manner. "Actually, the Buddhist race also has the branch of the delightful Buddha. Marriage is not forbidden, and there is no need to cut your hair either." "Get lost," Ling Han said in displeasure. "If you don't speak, I won't treat you as a mute." Ha 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 ha. The children and the little lowly all laughed. They continued to fight monsters, collecting the essence of metal. Ling Han and Shen Hanyun met, and after another half a month, they finally gathered enough essence of metal, fusing it into a metal element crystal. Finally, he was missing 1 out of 5. He was close to completing his mission. Next stop, the Rolling Stone Wasteland. They set out, heading towards the last location of the 5 elements. This took some time, and after 5 days, they finally arrived at their destination. Since it was a desolate plain, it was naturally a barren land. This place was covered with scorched earth, and there were few plants. However, thankfully, it was not as hot as the Golden Desert, and there were also rivers surging, so there was no need to worry about dying of thirst here. Everyone still moved separately, and agreed to meet up once every 5 days. For example, if anyone's luck was off the charts and directly collected the earth element crystal, the mission would be completed. However, after only 2 days, Ling Han began his seclusion. He could break through again. After cultivating in seclusion for half a day, Ling Han opened 9 more apertures. Now, he was only 9 aperture away from the end of the enlightenment tier. Of course, this didn't take into account hidden apertures. Tang Yuner soon became bored. She hid into the gourd and snored loudly. Ling Han was also very bored, but there was nothing he could do. This was for his own benefit. He advanced, searching for earth element creatures. There were many, all of them made up of round rocks. There were no joints at all, yet they could be attached together, which was very amazing. However, their strength was only SOSO. With Ling Han's current battle prowess, he could easily deal with them with a single finger. Unless he encountered a Stone King, he would be able to sweep aside all obstacles with his eyes closed. All of a sudden, goosebumps rose all over his body, and he felt a strong sense of danger assault him. He suddenly turned around, only to see a person striding over from the front. This was an energetic and handsome young man. His appearance was practically perfect, and there was not the slightest flaw to be found. He was dressed all in white and carried a sword on his back. His black hair fell over his shoulders, glossy and ink-blank. What Ling Han cared about was naturally not his appearance, but rather the aura that this person was exuding. It was as sharp as a sword and incredibly terrifying. This kind of aura was something that even Hong Tianbu couldn't compare to, and Hong Tianbu could only compare to him after he opened the eye of the primordial beast. "I've finally found you," the person in white said with a smile. Ling Han also smiled faintly. "I don't think I recognize you. Thank you for your hard work. I'm really embarrassed." The white-robed person faltered, then laughed loudly. "You are more interesting than I had imagined. I have always been a humorous person." Ling Han shrugged. Yet the white-robed man withdrew his smile and said, "My name is He-san." Ling Han gave an "Oh." What He-san and He-si? He did not recognize them at all. He-san was surprised. The other party actually did not change at all after hearing his name. That's right. This person definitely did not know his identity. He did not explain either. There was no need to waste this time. "I'll kill you," he said. Ling Han nodded. "I don't have any friends here either. You have especially come to find me, and I can also guess that you have come to kill me. Let me think. Firstly, the Pang and Lei clans should not be able to get a prodigy like you to come here, and secondly, they too think that I am dead, and would not expend so much effort." He paused, then continued. "So, you should be one of His Imperial Highness's men, right?" He-san smiled. "He is still unable to command me. However, an heir of our empire was almost killed by you, and you ruined a great matter of his. Since I now know, I naturally have to make this trip. You commit suicide. Commit suicide. Ling Han felt as if he had heard many people say this before. He had always felt that it was very foolish. Of course, when He-san said this, he naturally did not think that he was an idiot. He was only showing off. This person was qualified to show off. Ling Han chuckled and said, "There are many people who want to kill me, but you see, I'm still alive and well. So, you still have to work hard." Cheeky mouth. He-san moved and delivered a palm strike towards Ling Han. Boom! With a palm strike, winds and clouds rose. This was indeed a super genius. He himself should be a 3-star genius. Furthermore, after advancing into the celestial path, he was now suppressed to Mystery Realm tier. No matter what, he could still retain some battle prowess. Thus, in the case of Mystery Realm tier elites, He-san could be considered a 4-star genius. This naturally couldn't compare to Ling Han. He was a 4.5-star genius or even close to 5-star genius. However, his disadvantage was his cultivation level. After all, Ling Han was only at the enlightenment tier. Come, let's battle it out then. Ling Han clenched a fist and greeted He-san's attack. Boom! Their attacks clashed, and Ling Han couldn't help but somersault, retreating continuously. He-san looked surprised. You actually managed to block a palm strike from me? With how prodigious he was, this attack should have easily killed Ling Han. And oh wonder Meng Yongqing was forced to flee by himself. You do indeed have some abilities. He nodded and gave Ling Han a considerably high assessment. Meng Yongqing? That so-called Imperial Highness? Ling Han stopped. At present, he was practically capable of sweeping aside all Mystery Realm tiers, but against a 3-star genius it was still a bit difficult, what more when the present He-san might not only be just a 3-star genius. He stretched his arms and legs and said, "Aren't you afraid of being attacked out of your wits by me?" He-san's expression darkened. "To be able to survive a single move from me, you can indeed be proud, but to act arrogant in front of me, that is a great mistake." He moved again. This time, it was no longer a simple palm strike. Instead, he stimulated a high-level energy, which turned into a green light that blasted towards Ling Han. Ling Han was unafraid as he approached. Though he was no match in terms of raw power, battle prowess was not completely dependent on power. Hong! 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 The two of them continued to exchange blows. Ling Han first used the lightning fist, but he was completely outmatched by his opponent. Very soon, he was completely suppressed. A Mystery Realm tier who had the battle prowess of a 4-star genius was nothing to joke about. He-san smirked coldly. Nothing more than this. Ling Han did not speak. In response, he used the demonic monkey fists instantly. His aura changed immediately, filled with ruthlessness. Even if the heavens wanted to suppress him, he would still be able to turn the heavens upside down with a single punch. He-san couldn't help but feel shocked. It was as if he could see a demonic monkey from the ancient times wreaking havoc. That aura was enough to make him feel slightly apprehensive. His eyes lit up. Such a good fist technique would be too much of a waste on you. He also unleashed a technique, and it was as if he had transformed into a giant python that continued to entwine around Ling Han, yearning to kill him. This technique was actually inferior to the demonic monkey fists, but there was no helping it. He-san had the complete advantage in power, compensating for the inferiority of the technique itself, and had even turned the tables around to suppress Ling Han. Ling Han's expression was calm. He was still far from reaching the point of exhaustion. 70 overlapping layers of power frequency attack. He threw another punch, greeting He-san's entanglement. Pung! He-san was instantly sent backwards. You have actually grasped this kind of secret technique. He-san smiled instead, filled with emotion. The other's power was much weaker than his, yet he had relied on a technique to make up for it. He was overjoyed because he already saw the demonic monkey fists as his own. He also used his ultimate technique. With a tap of his finger, boundless light shone, and even the sun seemed to have lost its brilliance. Shattering Yang finger. Ling Han greeted the attack with the frequency of 70 overlapping layers of power, but with a single strike, he was forcefully sent backwards. He felt that even the bones in his fists were trembling, as if they were about to shatter. The power of this attack was really terrifying. Ling Han's bones had undergone 7 temperings, and could be considered the strongest under Celestial Path, but a single strike almost broke his bones. The might of this shattering yang finger could be considered terrifying. However, He-san was even more stunned than Ling Han. He naturally knew how powerful the shattering yang finger was, but it actually only caused Ling Han's fist to bleed, but did not shatter it. "What kind of fucking bones do you have?" Again, he tapped out another finger, and a brilliant light shone. Ling Han frowned upon seeing this. Although his bones could withstand this attack, it would still cause him injury. He didn't have a masochistic inclination. Thus, he unleashed a murderous aura attack. So what if it was He-san? He only felt an indescribable murderous aura grab at his heart, making it difficult for him to even breathe. However, he was a 3-star genius, after all, and had long since crossed over into Celestial Path. Immediately, his mind focused, and mystical power channeled through his body, expelling this fear from his body. However, in this manner, it was inevitable that a flaw would appear in his attack. Ling Han caught hold of it, and not only did he dodge this blow from him, he even threw a punch back at him, forcing him to dodge in this exchange. It could be said that the two of them were evenly matched. He-san's expression was dark. Who was he? As one of the top 3 prodigies in the younger generation of the Azure Dragon Majestic Empire, he wasn't someone that any random person could compare to at all. He had actually been forced into a tie by an unknown person. How could he accept this? He roared loudly, and his offensive became even more rapid. He had grasped a great many amazing techniques, and channeled them out continuously, their might astonishing. Ling Han mainly used his murderous aura and demonic monkey fists to greet this attack, but He-san was getting serious. After all, he had a major tier suppression in terms of cultivation level. This was a shortcoming that Ling Han couldn't get around, causing Ling Han to completely fall into a disadvantage and be in a perilous situation. In terms of battle prowess at the same cultivation level, the current He-san was really not much inferior, so he naturally had the complete advantage. Die! He-san delivered a palm strike. Flames blazed, but they were dark blue in color. Ling Han instinctively felt a chill. This blue flame was a high-level energy, and had great destructive power. He could not take it head-on. He retreated, but opened his mouth and spat out a golden sword. YP. He-san had never imagined that Ling Han would have this move. He hurriedly tilted his head to dodge this blow, but the blade of the sword still sliced off a few strands of his hair. His expression became increasingly livid. The dignified He-san had actually lost a few strands of his hair to a nameless nobody? "If you can survive, this will be enough to make your name resound throughout the world," he said balefully, his killing intent even stronger. This was a prodigy that could threaten him, and he had to be killed. Ling Han smirked coldly. With a shake of his fists, he had already wrapped the destructive energy around himself. Come, who would be afraid of whom? Boom! He brandished his fists as he charged forward. This time, it was He-san's turn to be stunned. He also instinctively felt a sense of danger. This black energy was filled with destructive power, and definitely could not be taken head-on. He retreated, grabbing rapidly with both hands as he did so. How could a supreme prodigy simply take a beating without fighting back? The air on either side of him was forcefully grabbed by him, forming an astonishing pressure, causing Ling Han's figure to involuntarily slow down. In fact, the pressure was so great that his face was slightly pale. Run, He-san smirked coldly. This was also a secret technique, and it was incredibly difficult to cultivate. Even if he publicized the secret scroll, there would not be more than 3 people that could grasp it. He took advantage of the opening to counterattack, and shot out a kick, which turned into a powerful surge of chi that looked like a true dragon. Ling Han shattered the air with his destructive energy, instantly regaining his freedom. He activated the 18 claws of the golden eagle, and his body soared into the sky like an eagle. Regardless of whether you were a primordial wild elephant or a wild bull, you were still only his hunting target. Hisan was unafraid. The only thing that he didn't dare to come into contact with was the destructive energy. So what if it was the 18 claws of the golden eagle? He had a celestial technique that could rival it. The two of them battled fiercely, and Ling Han was still at a disadvantage. The suppression of the cultivation level of a major tier was really too helpless. And if anyone knew the true cultivation level of the two of them, they would definitely think that Ling Han had won. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Ling Han was completely capable of beating Hisan up. Unfortunately, how could there be a truly fair battle in this world? If Hisan found out that Ling Han was actually only an enlightenment tier, his killing intent would definitely be even hotter, and he would kill Ling Han at all costs. This kind of person was too freakish. Just being alive was enough to make one feel flustered. He was practically a nightmare for prodigies. Ling Han had no choice but to admit that the other was indeed powerful. He was no match for him when he was at a cultivation level weaker than him by a major tier. However, how could he be someone who would give up so easily? His hands formed a strange pose. Instantly, a frightening aura exuded from his body, as if he had suddenly become the center of heaven and earth. Hisan couldn't help but feel shocked. Although Ling Han hadn't made a move yet, he already felt a coldness as if a storm was about to come. The impact of this one strike was bound to be earth-shattering. He didn't dare to be careless, and faced it with seriousness. Boom! Ling Han unleashed the 3 styles of the god of war. He formed his hands into palms and delivered a palm strike at Hisan. The power of heaven and earth surged, all of which was absorbed by his body. Then, acting as a medium, it blasted out majestically. Even Hisan was shocked, his eyes flickering. Though he had already had a high estimate of this move, he still felt apprehensive when this move was used. He roared loudly, and also channeled his strongest ultimate technique to clash head-on with Ling Han. He was Hisan, and he was definitely not inferior to anyone. Boom! In this exchange, Ling Han was still outmatched and stumbled back. However, he immediately pulled himself together and blasted out the second move of the 3 styles of God of War. He was truly like a god of war, his whole body suffused with blood and chi, as if he had just fought a bloody battle. He charged over with this powerful move, as if he could crush everything. Hisan did not back down either. He still sent out a heavy palm strike, greeting Ling Han's attack. Boom! The two of them exchanged another blow. This time, Ling Han was not at a disadvantage at all and tied with Hisan. The 3 styles of the god of war borrowed the power of heaven and earth, and each style was stronger than the last. Ling Han forcefully suppressed the boiling sensation in his chest as he unleashed the 3rd strike. "Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Hisan roared in fury, greeting the incoming attack with a palm strike. This was the ultimate technique that he had mastered, the ultimate mountain palm, and was also his strongest technique at present. Boom! In this clash, Hisan was instantly sent flying heavily. The 3 styles of the god of war was extremely powerful. However, this was also Ling Han's limit. The blood in his body was extremely chaotic, and he was also experiencing waves of agonizing pain. He was already unable to use the 3 styles of the god of war a second time. Though Hisan had been sent flying, his face was only slightly pale, and he had not sustained any serious injury. He smirked coldly. "Though this set of techniques of yours is powerful, and has increased your battle prowess by at least 10-fold, the burden it places on you is at least 100-fold. Can you cast the next move?" Ling Han had almost used all of his ultimate moves, and the only powerful killer move he had yet to use was the Heavenly Pattern Jade. However, this was only a one-time thing. If he failed to defeat his opponent, and instead fell into the latter's hands, he would suffer a great loss. "Let's go." He no longer hesitated. Using the imminent skyline, he covered a distance of 50 kilometers with a single step. "Don't even think about leaving." Hisan hurriedly gave chase, but Ling Han took another step forwards, and instantly threw him off his tail. When he had taken a few more steps, it was already impossible to determine which direction Ling Han had gone. He frowned. Though this opponent was not as freakish as himself, he was just barely qualified to be his opponent. After all, his cultivation level had descended from celestial path and had a certain advantage. If his opponent's cultivation level was completely the same as his, perhaps he really could pose a threat to him. Thus, he definitely had to get rid of this person. It was clear that he was here to harvest the essence of Earth. His motive was very clear, and that was for the sake of obtaining the 5 elements karmic pill. Thus, before he had gathered enough essence of Earth, it was impossible for him to leave. Otherwise, all his previous efforts would be wasted. "I will definitely find you and kill you," Xian said in a low voice, his tone baleful. After Ling Han cast the imminent skyline a few times, he finally switched to a normal speed. He was extremely displeased. This time, he was being suppressed in all aspects. Couldn't be helped. His opponent's cultivation level was now 1 major tier higher than his, and he was a 3-star genius. Of course, he was just that powerful. Even if I open the hidden apertures, it would still be impossible for me to be a match for him unless I advance into Mystery Realm tier. Ling Han frowned. Opening the hidden apertures wasn't like the 6th change or 7th change, where the improvement was so fierce. This was only paving the way for the future. The more hidden apertures opened, the faster the rate of cultivation would be in the future, but for the improvement of battle prowess. With more leaps in level of being, breaking through more barriers, battle prowess would definitely become stronger, but there shouldn't be any qualitative improvement. After running far enough, Ling Han's body had mostly recovered. In terms of the toughness of his physique, Xian was far from being able to compare to him. He continued to fight monsters. He would remember this debt from Xian first. However, only 2 days later, Xian caught up to him and immediately launched an attack. It was as if he was determined to kill him. This time, Ling Han didn't linger in battle. Instead, he directly used imminent skyline and left. There was no need to argue with Xian now. His priority was to obtain the earth element crystal, and from there, concoct the 5 elements karmic pill so that he could break through all the shackles in his body. He only had to advance into Mystery Realm tier, and in a real battle of equals, let's see how he would beat up this bastard. Though Xian was powerful, he did not have any good strategy against a godly skill like the imminent skyline. He could only watch helplessly as Ling Han fled, and then set off in pursuit again. He wanted to rely on his advantage of having a high cultivation level and accumulation of power to forcefully exhaust Ling Han to death. He seemed to have a unique method. This time, only a day later, he found Ling Han again, and began a mad barrage of attacks. However, though his tracking technique was awesome, it was still unable to do anything against Ling Han's imminent skyline. For 10 consecutive days, Ling Han was found 8 times by Xian. So he did not even have a moment of peace when he was fighting monsters. However, under such high pressure, his cultivation level was also rapidly increasing. He quickly opened the last 9 apertures, reaching the publicly acknowledged limit of the enlightenment tier. After opening 108 apertures, one could break through again. No matter where one was, this could be considered a prodigy. The majority of people had already opened 72 apertures, and no longer had the potential to charge forwards. However, Ling Han knew that his path as an enlightenment tier elite had only truly begun at this moment. Xian, just give me more pressure, so that I can complete my breakthrough. Hunted all the way, Xian pursued him all the way. He was one of the few prodigies of the younger generation of the Azure Dragon Empire. It could also be said that he was one of the most outstanding prodigies of this generation on the entire Moonlight planet. Since he had made up his mind to kill Ling Han, he definitely wouldn't give up so easily. His repeated failures only strengthened his killing intent, and the pace of his pursuit did not slow down in the slightest. Ling Han had to even choose a time to break through. He had to do it immediately after throwing Xian off his tail. Otherwise, as time passed, the latter would definitely follow his tracks. The opening of hidden apertures was extremely difficult, because the average person could only reach the level of 72 apertures, and reaching 108 apertures was already commendable. 108 is a minor cycle. Then, would the total number of apertures be 360, totaling to a complete cycle? Ling Han gritted his teeth. He had spent close to a year to open all 108 apertures, so if he really opened all 360 apertures, wouldn't that take another 2 years? However, no matter how long it took, if there was a target of perfection, he had to achieve perfection. Thus, it just so happened that there was such a super elite hunting him down, which could give him pressure on the line between life and death. He naturally did not want to miss out on such an opportunity. Ling Han continued to fight monsters. Now, he was only missing the essence of Earth, to say nothing of the fact that only He-san was hunting him. Even if 100 He-san joined forces, he would still stay here until he obtained the Earth element crystal. 7 days later, Ling Han suddenly experienced appreciation. He stopped and directly flopped onto the ground. Boom! The elevation of the level of being began with such ferocity. Ling Han ingested a treasured fruit of life, then began to break through the shackles in his body. Pa pa pa. One after another, the restrictions crumbled, and one aperture quietly opened. It could communicate with the heaven and earth, and could allow the mystical power to surge. The first of the hidden apertures. This was only the beginning. Not too long after, the second hidden aperture also opened, and then the third, advancing like a hot knife through butter. Half an hour later, he had already opened 9 hidden apertures. When he thought that this breakthrough was about to end, he discovered that the leap in level of being was still extremely turbulent. He could continue. Ling Han naturally wouldn't stop. After ingesting another treasured fruit of life, his breakthrough was still ongoing. The 10th hidden aperture, the 11th hidden aperture. After opening 9 more hidden apertures, the breakthrough finally stopped. Ling Han was astonished. He had actually unlocked 18 apertures this time. Going by that logic, he would probably only need about half a year's time, and would be able to open all the apertures of a complete cycle in his body. Of course, that was if there were a total of 360 major apertures. Wang, a terrifying killing intent blazed. He-san was here again. This time, Ling Han didn't flee. Instead, he faced him head-on. Moreover, his first move was the 3 styles of the God of War. He had unlocked several hidden apertures. Had his battle prowess soared? Hong! 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 After exchanging 3 moves, Ling Han turned around and fled. He unleashed imminent skyline and rapidly fled into the distance. He was still no match for He-san. Though he had unlocked a few hidden apertures, and his abilities had improved, there was no qualitative change in his abilities. Thus, after 3 moves, Ling Han fled. At this moment, He-san was naturally very depressed. Ling Han, who had been running off the moment he saw him, actually dared to make a move? Furthermore, if you want to fight, so be it. Why had you only exchanged 3 moves? These 3 moves stunned him slightly. The 3 styles of the God of War was too powerful, completely suppressing him. However, just as he was about to counterattack, Ling Han fled. You actually fucking ran away. He was filled with anger, and with a battle cry, he once again began his pursuit. The chase was still ongoing, and Ling Han didn't flee once he was caught up to. Instead, he used the 3 styles of the God of War to counterattack. He would first exchange 3 moves, then use the imminent skyne to flee. After a few times, the anger that He-san had accumulated was already off the charts. Was there anyone like you? From the very beginning, he had used 3 powerful moves, blasting him so hard that he could only defend passively, and when he was about to begin his counterattack, Ling Han ran off again, making him unable to use his full power and unable to vent his anger. Damn it, how infuriating. 10 days later, Ling Han broke through again. He opened another 18 hidden apertures. This time, he exchanged another 3 moves with He-san. He felt that his abilities had improved again, but he was still no match for He-san. Without a qualitative change, he should not be able to get the upper hand. Revenge was a dish best served cold. Moreover, he didn't need to serve it too cold at that. There was more and more essence of Earth in his possession, but being hunted down by He-san like this, he did not consider reuniting with the babies, because once his relationship with the babies was exposed, the 7 babies could possibly become factors that He-san would use to threaten him. He naturally wouldn't place his children in danger. He didn't even go to meet Shin Han-yun. Instead, he left a message at the agreed-upon meeting place, briefly explaining the situation. 10 days, 1 month, 3 months. Time continued to pass. He-san's willpower was astonishing, and he continued to follow behind Ling Han. It was as if he wouldn't leave this place until he killed Ling Han. Ling Han was also filled with anger at this. They were complete strangers, yet he had actually pursued him for half a year? Was there such a great enmity between them? Just you wait, when he has advanced into the Mystery Realm tier, we'll call all debts in. Though Ling Han was displeased, He-san did not seem to be any better off either. It should be known that when the two of them encountered each other afterwards, it was Ling Han who had used the 3 styles of the God of War to launch an attack, forcing him to only be able to protect himself at the beginning. Then, after the 3 moves, he would flee. This was just like how a woman in a brothel would receive guests, but in the end she would encounter someone who was too fast. She had not gotten enough of the fun yet, and the latter actually did not pay even after he was done playing. He simply grabbed his pants and fled. He was getting angrier and angrier, determined to crush Ling Han into dust. After so many days, Ling Han's strength had also steadily increased. The number of apertures he had opened had already reached as many as 324. He was very confident that the total number of apertures should be 360, which was just the number for a complete cycle. Soon, he thought. He now broke through about once every 10 days and opened 18 hidden apertures. Going by that calculation, he would only need to break through 2 more times, and he would be able to reach the pinnacle of enlightenment tier. It had to be admitted that He-san had a lot of credit for this. Without him coercing Ling Han like this, giving Ling Han enough motivation, it was definitely impossible for him to reach such heights in such a short period of time. Just as he was thinking this, He-san appeared again. This time, he directly struck out with his sword. He did not want to repeat the fate of being ruthlessly attacked by Ling Han right from the get-go. However, it was useless. The moment Ling Han's 3 styles of the God of War appeared, it immediately forced He-san to defend with all his might. However, when He-san caught his breath, Ling Han had already used Imminent Skyline and disappeared. He-san couldn't help but feel an urge rise up in him. Why not just forget about it? It was practically impossible to kill Ling Han here, so he had best stand guard outside. At that time, with his cauldron forging tier strength, wouldn't killing Ling Han be a piece of cake? However, he immediately shook his head. If he submitted to such thoughts, it would definitely leave a flaw in his mind. In future, if he wanted to break through to the peak stage of martial arts, there would be hidden dangers. He gave chase and continued his pursuit. Battle of willpower, He-san pursued him all the way. This time, he spared no expense. It seemed like he had used some kind of secret technique. Ling Han was completely unable to throw him off his tail. At most, he would be able to immediately catch up to him in half an hour. It was as if He-san had also realized that though Ling Han had always been no match for him, his battle prowess was steadily increasing. This was too terrifying, wasn't it? If the other party was allowed to grow endlessly like that, wouldn't he be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him? Though the other's strength was still far inferior, there would eventually come a day like this. Thus, he also became ruthless, determined to kill Ling Han. Ling Han naturally didn't have the time to fight monsters anymore. Moreover, he probably didn't need them anymore. With the 7 kids and Shin Han Yun, he definitely had enough essence of earth. He only needed to fuse them together to form an earth element crystal. Under He-san's forceful suppression, Ling Han didn't even have the time to cultivate his mystical power. His physical power was still fine, and his recovery ability was strong, so he didn't have to worry about exhausting it at all. However, it was a different story for his mystical power. Now, he was only expending it and not replenishing it. If he only relied on ingesting some alchemical pills, how could they compensate for his expenditure? In these 2 days, Ling Han's condition had become extremely poor. Even if he had opened up his meridians far wider than the average person, he still couldn't bear such expenditure. Thankfully, he was a grandmaster alchemist, and the effects of the alchemical pill that he concocted were far better than the alchemical pills concocted by an ordinary alchemist, and that was why he could continue to hold on. However, he couldn't bear it, and He-san didn't seem to be any better. Why hadn't he used this secret technique before? It was precisely because he had expended too much energy that he had not used it all this while. Now, he had made his decision. He would kill Ling Han at all costs, but that did not mean that his expenditure would suddenly decrease. After channeling for 2 consecutive days, He had almost reached his limit. His body was covered in sweat, and even his hair was sticking together. He was no longer as carefree as before. Now, rather than calling it a contest of battle prowess between the two of them, it would be better to call it a test of willpower. They were both close to reaching the limits of their physical bodies. Whoever could last longer would be able to grasp an advantage. Xian truly deserved the name of a supreme prodigy. His willpower was incredibly strong, and he continued to pursue Ling Han relentlessly. He believed that he would definitely be able to last longer than Ling Han. And in terms of willpower, who had Ling Han feared before? 5 days, 7 days, 9 days. On the 10th day, the two of them had actually reached their limits. It was clear that the other was right ahead of them, but they still had to take a few breaths before they could rush over. At this time, the toughness of Ling Han's physique showed its effects. Although his mystical power was close to drying up, and he could only squeeze out a little bit of it from alchemical pills, his physical power was still abundant. At least, he still retained 30% of his power. He was preparing to counterattack. As long as Xian's mystical power was expended completely, then if they both used their physical power, he could insta-kill Xian 10,000 times. It was about time. Ling Han suddenly stopped, turned around, and stared at Xian. "You're not running anymore?" Xian asked, panting heavily, trying his best to keep his tone as normal as possible. Ling Han smiled faintly. "Haven't you always wanted to spar with me? I'll oblige you." He strode forwards and charged towards Xian. "Humph! Do you think I don't know what you're thinking?" Xian sneered. He delivered a palm strike, and a resplendent light flickered. He had retained some power. "Go!" Ling Han waved his hand, and heavenly pattern jade flew out. His stance of wanting to fight Xian head-on was simply a pretense. The true killer move was the heavenly pattern jade. The heavenly pattern jade instantly soared to 10 times the speed of sound. Couldn't be helped. Ling Han's mystical power had expended too much, so the might of this attack was also considerably inferior. Spiritual power, spirit tool? Xian was startled, but he immediately recognized it. His expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly dodged. However, if he had dodged at the first instant, he might have been able to dodge, but to dodge when the heavenly pattern jade had already smashed out? It was too late. After all, he wasn't in his prime right now. Even 10 times the speed of sound was enough to kill him. Pong! The heavenly pattern jade hit Xian, but circles of golden seals surged out from Xian's body, turning into something like a golden bell, protecting him within. A pained expression instantly appeared on Xian's face. This was a talisman weapon that he had been bestowed with by an elite of his sect. When he suffered an irresolvable attack, it would automatically activate. It was a treasure that could save his life. This had already been used 3 times when he had ventured into ancient sites, and had also saved his life 3 times. He had never thought that when he was hunting down a mystery realm tier cultivator, he would actually use it again. However, this didn't matter. He could obtain a spiritual power spirit tool. In the long term, it was definitely no less important than talisman weapon. Ling Han was also surprised. He had not thought that Xian would actually have such a life-saving item. Again, he gave it his all as well. He activated the imminent skyline and charged towards Xian. At the same time, he also stimulated the destructive energy. Not only did it wrap around his hands, the 300+ apertures in his body also shot out at the same time. He was like a porcupine now. Pong! He crashed over. This human cannonball was even faster than heavenly pattern jade. Xian naturally couldn't dodge it, and he was instantly hit head-on. If he was still in his prime condition, then with his battle prowess and the strength of Ling Han, the counterattack he launched would be enough to severely injure or even kill Ling Han. But now he was sent flying from the impact, and the destructive energy was madly stabbing towards him. Wang! Another circle of golden seals flickered, turning into a golden bell that protected Xian. Fuck! There's more! Ling Han couldn't help but curse. His mystical power was already exhausted, and he couldn't use the imminent skyline again. However, Xian's scalp became even more numb. Now that he had used up another chance to save his life, the talisman weapon's energy was completely exhausted, and it turned into dust. no longer able to protect him. He was extremely depressed. He had really gone out for wool and come back shorn. Not only had he not managed to kill Ling Han and snatch the spiritual power spirit tool, he had instead expended 2 life-saving chances. However, he turned around and fled without hesitation. If Ling Han unleashed another set of attacks like that, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it. Could not be helped. His present state was too poor. Ling Han didn't give chase. He couldn't chase him at all. He flopped onto the ground and hurriedly took out alchemical pills which he ingested madly. However, he had ingested too many alchemical pills these past few days, and a powerful immunity had developed in his body. The effects were minimal. Fortunately, he didn't encounter any enemies. On the second day, when the sun rose, Ling Han hurriedly cultivated his mystical power and recovered it. Half an hour later, Ling Han felt refreshed and returned to his prime condition. However, he had recovered, and He-san was probably just about recovered as well. Later, he would definitely charge over to find him. He was just about to stand up, when his expression changed drastically. He was actually about to break through. The leap in level of being was already surging towards him. Should he immediately break through, or suppress his cultivation for the moment? Ling Han pondered for a moment before deciding to break through. If he advanced another step further, he would reach the peak stage of the Enlightenment tier, and he would be able to break through to Mystery Realm tier. Moreover, once he advanced into the Mystery Realm tier, would he still need to fear He-san? Ling Han broke through. Boom, the shackles in his body were instantly shattered, one after another. The great battle of these 10 days had completely squeezed out all his potential, allowing him to welcome the present burst of power. But right at this moment, an oppressive coldness approached. The lingering He-san had come again. Careless He-san would definitely not spare Ling Han. In terms of reputation, since he said he wanted to kill Ling Han, he definitely had to do it. Otherwise, wouldn't that ruin his reputation as the strongest of the younger generation of the Azure Dragon Empire? From a profitable point of view, Ling Han had mastered many astonishing precious techniques, as well as spiritual power spirit tools like the Heavenly Pattern Jade. He naturally wanted to obtain this, and this would have to be done by killing Ling Han first. Added with the fact that he had also expended 2 life-saving chances on Ling Han, this naturally made him want to take Ling Han down even more. Otherwise, it would be too much of a loss for him. Thus, after he recovered, he immediately ran back. Die! He-san attacked with his sword, and sword chi exploded. The whole sky was filled with sword chi, like a rainstorm. Without any hesitation, Ling Han immediately turned around and fled. He was at a crucial moment of breaking through, so how could he have the time to fight He-san? He used the imminent skyline a few times in a row, and under the violent tremors, his body instantly boiled. Originally, he could have withstood it, but now that he was breaking through, his body was undergoing an earth-shattering change in the first place. With such an impact, he instantly felt extremely terrible, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Again, Ling Han's expression revealed a hint of madness. Instead, he used this kind of shockwave to break through the hidden apertures. He actually succeeded. One of the apertures suddenly opened up. Very good, there were still 15 left. But right at this moment, He-san had already caught up. Motherfucker, who's afraid of who? Ling Han didn't flee. He couldn't use the imminent skyline for the time being, and he had no way to flee either. He charged at He-san, activating the 3 styles of the God of War. Faced with this 3 styles of celestial technique, although He-san had suffered countless times, he was still unable to suppress it. He could only retreat continuously, not daring to face it head-on. 1 style, 2 styles, 3 styles, and finally 3 styles had passed. Yet He-san was taken aback. Why was Ling Han fighting so slowly this time? Not good. Realization suddenly dawned on him. He had been tricked. Unfortunately, his reaction was too slow. Ling Han used imminent skyline and instantly left. The reason why he channeled the 3 styles of the God of War extremely slowly was to stabilize the boiling in his body, so that he could once again use the imminent skyline. Pooh! Ling Han spat out another mouthful of blood. Though he had delayed for a while, whether it was imminent skyline or the 3 styles of the god of war, they both placed a huge burden on his body, so how could he possibly truly recover? However, at this moment, he became even more frenzied, and his eyes had already turned blood red. Open! 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 He roared. Pa! Several more shackles in his body were broken through consecutively, and he had also opened 2 apertures in a single go. There were another 13 apertures to go. In just a short while, Xianxia came again. He was like a lingering ghost. Ling Han sighed internally. If Xianxia was really a lingering ghost, that would be great. He could use the 6 characters Bright King Curse to force him to retreat. Without hesitation, he rushed forwards again, pulling out the stance of the 3 styles of the god of war. Do you fucking know any other moves? Xianxia mocked internally, as he hurriedly retreated. However, he discovered that Ling Han hadn't used the 3 styles of the god of war at all. He had only put on an act. He had been tricked. Xianxia called out internally. True, Ling Han had just used the 3 styles of the god of war, so how could he possibly channel it a second time so quickly? He flew into a humiliated rage and hurriedly charged towards Ling Han. Ling Han humphed and drew out the shard of the tombstone, which he threw at Xianxia. Boom! This brick was instantly enshrouded in layers of yin qi, as if there were vengeful ghosts that would not disperse. Fuck! Why had it mutated? Ling Han was also taken aback. He hadn't used the fragment of the tombstone since he came to the Moonlight Planet, nor had he taken it out. Who would have thought that there would be such a huge change? Could it be that it was possible that the tomb was buried here, and the shard had been stolen from here, and that was why it had mutated? Yin Qi soared sky-high, an astonishing sight. Xianxia's expression also changed drastically. He hurriedly ran back, and only when he had ran out of the area covered by Yin Qi did he stop. He looked at Ling Han and said, "You are really seeking death. You actually dare to use something with such dense Yin Qi. Now, there is no need for me to move. You would be enshrouded in Yin Qi and die without any illness." This wasn't an exaggeration. After being struck by the brick, anyone would be embroiled in misfortune and be extremely unlucky. Even Hong Tianbu, who had great fortune, couldn't avoid it. He had been unlucky for a good few months. At present, Ling Han was completely entwined in Yin Qi. Then it would not be a matter of bad luck, but rather death. Then you can just wait slowly. Ling Han completely ignored the Yin Qi and began to break through again. Pa! The shackles in his body shattered one after another, and the hidden apertures were also rapidly opening one after another. 5, 7, 9, 15. There were only 3 left. However, at this time, Ling Han's advancement slowed down, as if he was powerless to continue. This was obviously because he had been disturbed by Xianxia and had not been able to focus on breaking through, which led to such consequences. Ling Han didn't know if he would still have the chance to open the remaining 3 apertures after missing this opportunity. Thus, he definitely had to revive, break. He stimulated the dimensions in his body, and millions of living beings released their spiritual power at the same time, forming a driving force. Pa! The 16th aperture opened. After a while, Pa! The 17th aperture opened. There was only 1 left. But even if Ling Han was already working so hard, there would eventually come a time when manpower was exhausted. His life force was beginning to decline, and his breakthrough was about to end. No way! A frenzied expression appeared on Ling Han's face. He opened his mouth and took the initiative to absorb the Yin Qi. He needed energy now, and he needed help. Who cared what it was? It was fine as long as it could help him push open another aperture. Idiot! Xianxia shook his head. He had really never seen such an idiot. Was he complaining that he was not dying fast enough? However, after the Yin Qi was stimulated like this, it became increasingly violent, boiling like boiling water. Even Xianxia could not see clearly. All he could see was a lifeless black gas. Yin Qi entered his body, and Ling Han shivered. This was not just the coldness of his body, but also a kind of desolation in his soul, making him feel as if he was about to die. Break. Yet Ling Han did not care, and stimulated this energy, once again activating the leap in level of being that was about to calm down. Boom, he had randomly messed around and actually succeeded. Pa pa pa. Another 3 shackles were shattered, and the 18th aperture was also penetrated. A shocking scene appeared. All of Ling Han's apertures lit up at the same time, like a sky filled with stars. At this moment, it was as if he had cultivated some kind of divine physique. In just an instant, all the major apertures of a complete cycle had dimmed and temporarily returned to being ordinary, just waiting to explode. Boom! It was as if the heaven and earth had been enraged. Bursts of thunder rang out, and lightning flashed past, as if it wanted to kill a certain treasonous person. No matter how heavy the yin qi was, it would not be able to withstand the fury of this heaven and earth. In an instant, all the yin qi had been dispersed. Xian finally saw Ling Han again, and couldn't help but smirk coldly. Though this brat seemed to be very lucky, and even the heavens were helping him, it was already too late. He had absorbed too much yin qi, and even the air of death was exuding from him. Was there still any hope for him? Wondrous Buddhist race technique, how foolish. You are seeking your own death. Xian waved his sleeve, though he was slightly puzzled. Why had Ling Han not fled this time, but rather fought him to the death time and time again? Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't have needed to use that evil weapon with overflowing yin qi, causing him to be enshrouded in yin qi and seek his own death. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "What you think is just what you think." Was this a tongue twister? Xian did not make a move. By now, there was already no need for him to make a move. Ling Han's body was enshrouded in yin qi, and the time of his death was drawing near. Yet Ling Han stretched out a hand and shouted at himself, "An!" Boom! The Buddhist chant was vast and mighty and thought-provoking. The 6 characters' bright king curse could suppress evil and could kill evil spirits. It was used to subdue evil beasts and transcend dead souls. As he spat out this word, a black-colored aura of death instantly surged out of Ling Han's palm. Then, it turned into ash, as if it had been annihilated. This is a Buddhist race technique to exorcise the dead. Xian blurted out, "You are a Buddhist race being. Fuck you. You're the one who is a bald monk." Ling Han thought, but ignored him completely. Instead, he continued to shout at his hands, "An!" Boom, another ball of black qi was forced out by him. "N, N, 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 N." As Ling Han continued to shout, puffs of black qi were forced out and then annihilated. The corner of Xian's mouth twitched slightly. Why was it that every time you fucking speak, it was only the word "and"? Wasn't the 6 characters' bright king curse supposed to have 6 true words? What about the other 5? Have you eaten them all? In truth, Ling Han also wanted to use the complete 6 characters' bright king curse. Why was it 6 characters? That was definitely because it had to be used as a complete set to be able to maximize its might. If it was just "and," the effects of expelling evil would definitely be limited. But what could he do? He only knew the word "and." "N, N, N, N." He continued to shout. "And your sister." Xian couldn't take it anymore. With a loud roar, he charged towards Ling Han. Now, the aura of death was all inside Ling Han's body, and whatever was spat out would also be immediately annihilated. Could no longer injure him. With a thought from Ling Han, the apertures of a complete cycle lit up at the same time, like the stars that filled the skies, forming a screen of light around his body. Pong! Xian's attack arrived, yet was blocked by the starlight. What? Xian faltered for a moment. What kind of freakish defense was this? It was too terrifying, wasn't it? He roared loudly, and blue energy activated. It finally broke through the defense of the starlight screen and continued to attack Ling Han. However, there was enough time for Ling Han to retreat. He didn't counterattack, and he simply shouted at himself, "An!" The most important thing now was to expel the aura of death. This was fatal. He could already feel that the vitality of his internal organs had greatly decreased and were presently depleting. If he did not quickly force it out, there would be a great problem. Xian gave chase again, but this time, Ling Han didn't use the starlight screen. Instead, he used imminent skyline to retreat. It wasn't that Ling Han didn't want to use it, but that after it was shattered, there was no way to reform it at the first instant, and there was a cooldown period. Fortunately, it didn't take long. When Xian caught up again, Ling Han's apertures of a complete cycle lit up again, forming a screen of starlight. Pong! Xian's attack arrived, yet was unable to penetrate through his defenses. He had to use blue-colored energy, and only then would he be able to damage the light screen made up of stars. That was a little like destructive energy, though it was slightly inferior in quality. However, it was still extraordinary. However, this was also the problem. This energy was too powerful, and it placed a heavy burden on Xian, preventing him from channeling it for a long time. Pong, pong, pong. There was no blue-colored energy, and Xian only managed to shatter the light screen after firing a total of 17 times. However, this also gave Ling Han enough time to recover, and he once again used imminent skyline. N. The black qi in his body was continuously expelled, and his condition was also improving. At first, his whole face was so dark that it could barely be seen, but now, not only had it returned to white, it had also become rosy. Not too long after, he would be able to return to a state of perfection. Xian was extremely depressed. Why did Ling Han suddenly have an incomparably powerful defensive technique? No, this definitely wasn't an ordinary secret technique, but rather a mystical power. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be so powerful. But why hadn't Ling Han cast it earlier? Could it be that he had just mastered it? To be hunted to the point of exhaustion, then explode and awaken a mystical power? Xian really wanted to slap himself. If that was really the case, wasn't he the most foolish person in the world? Die! 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 He brandished his sword, his eyes bloodshot, looking like he had gone mad. After Ling Han shouted and a few more times, the aura of death in his body was completely expelled. He laughed loudly. Xian, we'll call it a day. See how I beat you up the next time we meet. He channeled the imminent skyline consecutively, and after completely throwing Xian off his tail, he then walked quickly. In this way, it would take Xian at least half an hour to catch up to him. Ling Han was filled with confidence. He had already unlocked the apertures of a complete cycle. Now, he only had to take another step further, and he would advance into the Mystery Realm tier, and in a battle of equal cultivation levels, who would be a match for him? He only needed a few days now. Ling Han continued to cultivate the last step of this cultivation level. After his level of being had increased, his meridians could expand a little more. As long as he completed this step, he would be considered to have reached the true end of the enlightenment tier. Xian, just you wait. Ling Han didn't gather any more essence of earth. There was only one thing he needed to do these few days, and that was to perfect his cultivation of enlightenment tier to perfection. He tried his best to conceal his tracks, using the hide of the void beast to conceal himself. This was very effective. As expected, Xian could no longer find him. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Every morning, Ling Han would extract the power of heaven and earth from the heaven and earth, and his meridians would continuously expand, breaking through to the pinnacle level. When he was cultivating, his own aura naturally could not be concealed, but it was only for half an hour. Even with good luck, Xian had only caught up to him after Ling Han finished cultivating, and he had easily thrown him off his tail. 9 days later, Ling Han couldn't advance any further. The meridians had already expanded to the extreme, and the major apertures of a complete cycle had also been completely opened. The appearance of the starlight screen made him realize that he had cultivated enlightenment tier to the extreme, and that was also how mystical powers like technique and sort of metal had appeared, which also meant that he had now cultivated enlightenment tier to perfection. In that case, he would begin his attempt to break through to Mystery Realm tier. Theoretically speaking, Mystery Realm tier wasn't too difficult. What was Mystery Realm tier? It was to find a mystery realm in his body and use it to store mystical power. This would be the source of his future energy. If he still used his meridians as a storehouse for mystical power, then after he advanced into Celestial Path, wouldn't the might of his attack be earth-shattering and instantly exhaust all his mystical power? Then wouldn't that mean that there was no meaning to the expansion of meridians? Of course not. The wider the meridian network expanded, the stronger the power of the attack would naturally be. In other words, the width of the meridian network determined the explosive power of the cultivator, and the size of the mystery realms determined the endurance of the cultivator. Both were equally important. Ling Han's mystery realm thus. Ling Han definitely had to choose carefully which part of his body it was better to develop into a mystery realm. There was only one chance, and once it was decided, after breaking through into mystery realm tier, his was something that couldn't be changed. Was it the Dantian that the majority would choose? Dantian was the Sea of Qi, and it could become an independent space, storing a large amount of mystical power. It was not a bad choice. Or the mind, which could similarly be opened up into an independent space. Dantian? Ling Han shook his head. This was the choice of the masses, and if he wanted to become the strongest, he definitely could not walk the path of the masses. Then what about his mind? He couldn't either. That was where his divine sense was located. If he placed his divine sense together with his mystical power, who knew what would happen? But with these two options gone, what other choice did he have? No matter which part it was impossible to create an independent space, just like how the meridians in his body had a limited space. Ling Han's eyes lit up. He had already had an idea, but didn't know if he could successfully execute it. He had great ambitions. He wanted to cultivate to a height that there would never be a second person that could reach. Using the dimensions in his body as a mystery realm. Just how many dimensions did he have in his body? And just how large was this space? If he could develop all these dimensions into mystery realms, then he really wouldn't have to worry about not having enough power to continue. Who could compete with him? Most importantly, this was a path that no one had ever walked before. He had to carefully explore it, and there was not the slightest precedent that he could learn from. However, this was definitely the path of the strongest that he wanted to pursue, so Ling Han could not possibly shrink back. Come! He sat down in a cross-legged position. At present, he needed an absolutely quiet environment, because he did not know how much time he would need to complete his breakthrough. Thankfully, he had the void beast hide wrapped around him. As long as he did not begin his true breakthrough, the heaven and earth would not resonate with him, so his aura naturally would not leak out. If Isan found him again, that would definitely be him being extremely unlucky. Ling Han calmly thought about transforming the dimensions in his body into mystery realms. This was only an idea, but as for how to implement it, it was definitely not something that could be done with mere thought. He first simulated it, and after confirming that it could work, he finally began. The leap of level of being began, and Ling Han underwent the final great upgrade of the mortal level. Next, though he could also break through the shackles, that was only cultivation of a minor level, and could not be compared to breaking through to a major tier. It had begun. Ling Han stimulated the dimensions in his body. He naturally chose the transcendent dimensions as the first to be opened to become mystery realms. The dimensional passageway had long since formed, and this was a ready-made one. There was no need for Ling Han to construct it. However, the problem was how to open a passageway so that mystical power could circulate. Fortunately, Ling Han had done some experiments before, moving the living beings and objects out of his body. Though they were all crushed into dust by the power of heaven and earth of this world, it still allowed him to accumulate experience. How he had come out in the past was how he was going to enter now. Furthermore, he had to open up a stable passageway. It was impossible that whenever he unleashed his might, he would have mystical power come out as if it was toothpaste. Then what was the point of continuing the battle? Thus, to Ling Han, the key question was how to open this passageway. This sounded simple, but connecting the dimensions and meridians was definitely not something that could be done with just a few words. Ling Han began to experiment constructing a passageway. However, once the surging energy surged, this passageway was destroyed. Again, it was still very quickly destroyed. Again. Ling Han made endless attempts. Though each attempt ended in failure, he could learn from it every time, improve and improve. It was unknown how many times he had failed. When Ling Han was a little numb, a new passageway was constructed, and mystical power surged. There was no damage? Ling Han also came to his senses after a while. He had initially planned to construct a new passageway. Boom! It was as if the mystical power in the meridians had found its owner, and they all surged towards this transcendent dimension. In the future, the meridian system would no longer be responsible for storing mystical power. It would only provide mystical power for the circulation of power. This would undoubtedly increase Ling Han's battle prowess greatly. However, the improvement of level of being wasn't over yet. Ling Han continued to open a new passageway to communicate with the dimensions. His speed was very fast because this did not involve opening up a mystery realm, and he only needed to build bridges right until he broke through to Celestial Path. After such a long time, he had a very high chance of constructing a passageway for all the dimensions in his body, turning them into a storage for his mystical power. The heaven and earth immediately sensed it again, and a large number of dark clouds gathered. Thunder rumbled, and lightning flashed closely. Ling Han ignored it completely, and merely tried his best to construct a passageway in his body. 10,000. Half a day passed, and Ling Han's level of being finally stopped. Meanwhile, he had also constructed more than 73,000 passageways, connecting to the same number of dimensions. In terms of the maximum amount of mystical power that could be stored, he could probably compare to the level of mystical power of sect masters or even venerate tiers, right? There was no end to mystery realm tier. In the future, as the cultivation level increased, the space created could still continue to expand, but no matter how much it expanded, could it compare to a freak like Ling Han? He could also expand his dimensions, transforming the low-level dimensions MTO medium-level dimensions, high-level dimensions, and even transcendent dimensions. Of course, the problem now was not increasing the level of dimensions, but rather how to fill up the existing dimensions. Previously, the mystical power stored in his meridians couldn't even fill the first dimension, making Ling Han feel extremely hungry. This naturally wasn't because he wanted to eat, but because he needed to store more mystical power. He was sure that this feeling of hunger would accompany him for a very, very long time, because his mystery realms were really too big. Moreover, as his level of being increased each time, he would construct more passageways, and his hunger would also increase. Ling Han sighed. Others were worrying about the mystery realm not being big enough, but he was actually worried that the mystery realm was so big that it couldn't be filled even when he rushed up to the foundation building tier or even cauldron forging tier. What kind of blissful worry was this? My current strength has changed drastically. Ling Han stood up, and with a casual wave of his hands and feet, it was as if he could destroy the heavens and earth. This was the ultimate power of Immortal. As for He-san, come. Let's see how he will defeat this guy. Ling Han wasn't disappointed. Without the void beast hide to conceal his aura, He-san quickly found him. He looked coldly at Ling Han, his killing intent solidifying. Why aren't you attacking or running? He asked. Previously, whenever Ling Han had been caught up to by him, he would either turn around and run, or he would rush up, fire 3 moves and run again. He had never been as calm as he was now. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I want to give you a good beating, so how can I run? Ha 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 ha. He-san laughed loudly. What a joke. If it was not for the fact that you have mastered a godly escape technique, you would have long since been buried half a year ago. Come. Ling Han crooked a finger at him. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, he was invincible. Crushed He-san was a little uncertain. In his impression, Ling Han was definitely not the type to be forcefully stubborn. This person was incredibly slippery, and if he couldn't win, he would run without any hesitation at all. Now, he did not run, nor did he use any tricks. He looked like he wanted to confront him head-on, which confused him. Could it be that he was up to something? Do you really dare to fight me? He-san asked calmly. Today, I'll make you kneel and admit defeat, Ling Han said with a smile. Cheeky mouth. He-san humphed and charged towards Ling Han. The long sword in his hand flew out in a slash. The sword swept past, and Sword Chi soared into the skies. It had to be admitted that He-san was indeed very powerful. If he was still a mystery realm tier, he would definitely be one of the top elites. He was a 3-star genius. And now, he had been suppressed back to this level from Cauldron Forging tier, so his battle prowess could only be stronger. He was almost comparable to a 4-star genius of Mystery Realm tier, and that was enough to sweep aside all obstacles in this cultivation level. The problem was that Ling Han had already surpassed a 4-star genius. After opening 360 apertures, it was equivalent to him breaking through another limit and advancing into Mystery Realm tier. On this basis, what level would his battle prowess reach? Ling Han stepped forwards, his iron fists swinging out, and shrouded in the power of metal. Pong! The fist crashed into the sword, and instantly, a massive ball of light burst out. It was like a meteor had crashed into it, creating a massive explosion, and a figure was sent flying out of the explosion even faster than the transmission of energy. It was Xianxia. This wasn't the first time he had been sent flying by Ling Han. He had faced the 3 styles of the God of War head-on, and the result was that he had been sent flying. But that would have to be the 3 styles of the God of War. With all his might, Ling Han could only channel the 3 styles of the God of War once, and could not possibly use it consecutively. But now, Ling Han had only thrown a simple punch. Pong! Xianxia fell onto the ground. He immediately got back to his feet. He was not injured, but the expression on his face was as if he had seen a ghost. He was actually no match for the power of Ling Han's punch. That wasn't the 3 styles of the God of War. How was this possible? What's impossible? Ling Han said calmly. In a battle of equals, I'm invincible. Xianxia couldn't figure out why Ling Han had suddenly become so much stronger. This was completely illogical. Even if Ling Han had advanced into Celestial Path, he would still be suppressed by the heaven and earth here, and once again be struck down to Mystery Realm tier. This battle prowess would still increase, but it would definitely be limited, and would not be too exaggerated. However, now that Ling Han's battle prowess had increased, it was more than 10 times stronger than before. This was completely unrealistic. Are you shocked? Are you surprised? With a tap of Ling Han's foot, he had already caught up to Xianxia, and shot out another punch. Xianxia sent out a palm strike in response, but the moment the fist and palm came into contact, he was sent flying. He was like a child that was clashing head-on with a sturdy man. The gap was incredibly wide. Ling Han chased after him again, his iron fists striking out continuously. Pong, pong, pong. Xianxia could only stay on the defensive, continuously retreating and being sent flying. Heaven's Shadow Sword! Xianxia roared loudly. As the sword swept past, blue-colored energy surged, forming a frightening destructive power. Finally, Ling Han was forced back a single step, and he was able to catch his breath. He used his sword to support himself, breathing heavily. How was this possible? How was this possible? Now that he had used his ultimate move, he was actually only able to force Ling Han to stop for a short while? Just like how Ling Han had used the 3 styles of the God of War previously, he looked mighty on the surface, but in truth, he was only strong on the outside but weak on the inside. A thought suddenly occurred to him, and he exclaimed in shock. You have indeed broken through, but it is not Celestial Path that you have broken through, but rather Mystery Realm tier. Now, everything could be explained. Ling Han couldn't help but scoff. You finally realized? Xianxia was speechless. Only now did he know that Ling Han wasn't boasting at all when he said that he was invincible among his peers, but rather he was really that powerful. Even if Ling Han had clearly explained at that time, he would definitely not have believed that Ling Han could just barely stand against him when he was only in the Enlightenment tier. There was someone in this world that was more freakish than him, and had surpassed him by so much at that. Wasn't that a joke? But now, there was no need for Ling Han to say anything. He had realized it on his own. This really was a supreme freak. Were they still going to fight? Xianxia didn't think that he had any chance of winning. In the Enlightenment tier, Ling Han was almost capable of contending against him, and now, he had advanced to a new level, and his abilities had undergone an earth-shattering leap. Get out of this place. He was in the Cauldron Forging tier, so no matter how freakish Ling Han was, so what? As long as there was no restriction from heaven and earth, even if Ling Han was a 10-star prodigy, he would still be able to suppress Ling Han with a single finger. With this in mind, he instantly decided to retreat. You want to leave? That's impossible. Ling Han shook his head. If you had made up your mind to flee early on, it would have been fine. Now that you're right at my doorstep, you still want to leave? I admit that your natural talent can also be ranked in the upper echelons of the universe. But if you want to detain me, Pong! Hisan was just about to say a few words to keep up appearances. He could not allow his prestige to be weakened, but he had not even finished his words when he was sent flying. Ling Han turned his neck and exercised his shoulders. Just now, it was he who had sent Hisan flying with imminent skyline. With how tough his physique was, this kind of collision was completely no big deal. But Hisan was in trouble. With how fast the imminent skyline was, even if Ling Han's own weight was only over 50 kilograms, the destructive power of such a high-speed collision was still incredibly terrifying. At least 2 of his bones had been broken, and his face was extremely pale. Hisan's face was filled with fury. He had never been treated like this before. He had not even finished his words when he was interrupted, and in such a crude manner at that. But there was nothing he could do. Though this method was simple and violent, its might was extremely domineering, and that was to use brute strength to crush and forcefully take advantage of its opponent. Hisan roared in fury and brandished his sword in attack. Ling Han raised his fist and threw a punch. Under the overwhelming power, the sword in Hisan's hand instantly slipped out of his grip. He retreated continuously, while blood continued to drip from his right hand. That attack just now had caused the web between his thumb and forefinger to split open. Ling Han strode forwards. He opened up the major apertures of a complete cycle, forming the very brilliant starlight screen. Hisan appeared slightly despondent. How could you possibly be so powerful? This is impossible. This is impossible. Although he understood that Ling Han's breakthrough this time was into Mystery Realm tier, causing his battle prowess to soar, he still couldn't understand how a Mystery Realm tier could be as strong as this. Was this a 4-star genius? No, he was now comparable to a 4-star genius of Mystery Realm tier. Even if he was slightly inferior, he wouldn't be too far off. A 4-star genius definitely wouldn't be able to thrash him so easily. 5-star genius. He was extremely jealous. To say nothing of a 5-star genius, even 4-star geniuses only existed in legends. He, a 3-star genius, could never hope to catch up, yet now he actually discovered that he had actually encountered a 5-star genius. Nothing is impossible. Ling Han threw a punch. He didn't need to use any secret technique at all, and one punch was enough. Pong! Hisan tried his best to disperse it. He had used a powerful move, but the result was only just neutralizing it. His powerful move was actually only capable of dispersing a casual punch from the other. Who in the world are you? Hisan asked through gritted teeth. You're definitely not from Moonlight Planet. There's definitely no such person as you. Substitution Seal. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, when you wanted to kill me, you didn't care who I was. Now that I've turned around to kill you, there's no need for you to know who I am. Humph, if it was not here, I would be able to crush you with one hand, Hisan said through gritted teeth. Ha 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 ha. Ling Han laughed loudly, his expression filled with contempt. I am a descendant of the great emperor, and have innumerable rare treasures on me. If we really battle in the outside world, I will take out my ancestral weapon, and even if a saint came, I would be able to kill him. Fuck. Wasn't it just boasting? Who wouldn't know how to do it? Hisan's whole person trembled. A descendant of a great emperor, and he even had an ancestral weapon with him. Just how terrifying was that existence? Aside from the ancestral kings, saints were invincible. However, against the imperial weapon and ancestral weapon, they could only bow their heads in submission. This young man was actually the descendant of an ancestral king? No wonder he was so freakish. Ling Han spluttered in laughter again. He shook his head and said, I was just joking with you. I'm destined to become an emperor. So why would I need to rely on the blessings of an ancestral king? Hisan couldn't help but inhale sharply. You really dare to say it? Although cultivators who didn't want to become ancestral kings weren't good cultivators. Everyone knew themselves well. Even prodigies such as Hisan knew that the limit of their lifetime achievements could just possibly be sect master level. to become a Venerate tier elite? Unless he had heaven-defying good fortune and obtained a heaven-defying opportunity. Otherwise, in these many years, why was there only a single Venerate tier on Moonlight Planet? Thus, saints were even rarer. Any saint would be able to sweep aside all opposition in the universe, and if a great emperor did not appear, who would be able to match him? Yet Ling Han actually confidently declared that he wanted to become an emperor. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? No matter how freakish you were, you would only have a 1 in 10,000 chance of becoming a saint, what more becoming an emperor. What a joke, he said coldly. Whether it's a joke or not, you'll know in the future, but you won't be able to see this day. Ling Han charged out again, throwing a punch. It was very ordinary, but seemed capable of destroying the heavens and destroying the earth. San parried, but every time he took a blow, he would be throwing up blood endlessly. He was no match for Ling Han at all. In a battle of equal cultivation levels, Ling Han was invincible. San could only draw out the blue energy to match it, but this was too exhausting on him. In a few moments, he was panting heavily. Ling Han also lost his patience. Originally, San could have been his whetstone, but now that he had advanced into Mystery Realm tier, his once powerful opponent could not even withstand a single blow. It was not enough for him to go all out at all. He would kill him. He channeled the destructive energy, wrapping it around his fists as he faced San's blue energy head-on. This was a clash between two high-level energies. Boom, the fist and the sword clashed, and San was sent flying. The blue-colored energy instantly crumbled, and destructive energy wreaked havoc. They were both high-level energies, but there were also qualitative differences. It could only be said that they were of a higher level than mystical power, but there were also rankings among high-level energies. Boom, under the sweeping attack of destructive energy, San instantly disappeared without a trace. So cleanly, Ling Han was surprised. With San's strength, the destructive energy should not have blasted him into oblivion with a single strike. LMG Han looked up at the sky. 2 pieces of paper seals fell, and even destructive energy didn't damage them. Instead, it was as if they had only become like this after it had ignited itself. Substitution seal? 10,000-mile escape talisman? He summoned Tang Yuner. When the little Lal saw these 2 pieces of broken talisman paper, she immediately called out. Hearing the name, Ling Han understood. Not only had San not died, he had even fled. The substitution seal had saved San from being killed by the destructive energy, and the 10,000-mile escape talisman had instantly sent him tens of thousands of miles away. When there was an elite backing him up, there were a lot of benefits. Previously, he still had a talisman weapon to block a fatal attack. Ling Han felt slightly regretful. This should be a fat sheep. If he could capture him, he would definitely be able to make a fortune. Handsome brother, have you finally defeated that guy? The little lowly asked. Ling Han nodded with a smile. Yes. Then we can finally leave this godforsaken place. Right? The little lowly's mouth was crooked. What had they eaten these few months? She couldn't bear it. Ling Han arrived at the agreed-upon location. After 2 days, the 7 children and Shin Han Yun came over. Everyone gathered the essence of Earth together, not only fusing together to form an Earth element crystal, but there was also surplus enough for half of another Earth element crystal. Unfortunately, everyone was about to throw up at this place, so they naturally had no interest in fighting anymore aside from Shin Han Yun. He expressed that he had nothing to do anyways, and wanted to continue killing monsters with the remaining essence of Earth, right until he managed to gather enough to form another Earth element crystal. Ling Han knew that this guy wanted to find something for him to do. Otherwise, if he lost the purpose of his life, he would only be at a loss. He patted Shin Han Yun's shoulder, then took his leave. After leaving the Rolling Stone Wasteland, the little lowly summoned the shuttle, and the 2 of them boarded it. It instantly tore through the air and left. This is farewell for now, Moonlight Planet. Ling Han turned around to look. He thought to himself, it won't be long before I return here again. At that time, I'll completely settle accounts with the Pang clan and the Lei clan, and if I encounter San, I won't mind stepping on him. Xiao, the shuttle was extremely fast, and soon entered into the galaxy, beginning to traverse through the nodes of space. Once, twice, thrice, and after about 2 months they finally returned to Celestial Sea Planet. More than a year had passed since their separation. Be careful. Don't crash into anyone again, Ling Han warned in advance. This little lowly was completely a destructive character. I know. The little lowly nodded, but looking at her fanatical expression, she was obviously just brushing Ling Han off. As expected, she steered the shuttle and landed, aiming directly at a sect. Boom, after she crashed into a mountain peak, this mountain peak crumbled forcefully. Countless bits of rubble fell, and dust and sand filled the air, enshrouding an area of several dozen kilometers. Taking advantage of the chaos, Ling Han hurriedly grabbed the little lowly and ran. Thankfully, this sect was not allied with the Dark North Nation, so he would just treat it as teaching them a lesson. After spending another 3 days, Ling Han finally returned to the imperial capital. Yo, we haven't seen each other for over a year, and you've become even more beautiful, Ling Han said with a smile after entering the Foreign Affairs Department and seeing Princess Bixiao. If there was any change in the Foreign Affairs Department, it was that it was much quieter. To say nothing of the fact that it was deserted, it was actually not that much stronger either. True, now that the forces that should have submitted had also surrendered, the Foreign Affairs Department was naturally useless. Princess Bixiao was indeed even more radiant, elegant, and lively. It was not that her appearance had changed, but as she had walked further on the celestial path, her bearing had naturally become lively and pure. Upon seeing her, everyone's first reaction was that she was a celestial maiden descending from the heavens. Princess Bixiao couldn't help but be rendered speechless. Now, only Ling Han would dare to speak so glibly to her, but more importantly, this guy did not have the slightest bit of evil thoughts. He was completely teasing her, so she couldn't get angry even if she wanted to. You finally returned. The situation in the imperial capital has changed drastically again, she said.